Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have waited a long time for this, but now we are ready to go racing again. Hello to you all, wherever you are watching from around the world. It's the first ever Champions of the Future meeting here in a beautiful sunny day here on the Friday of our first weekend at Circuito Internacional de Zuera here in Zaragoza in Spain. It is a wonderful place to be racing. I'm Jake Sanson and I'm with you all the way through the weekend. We're here for our first ever Friday qualifying show. And it's going to be a very interesting one as we guide you through all of the teams and driver changes that are going to be present here for the four classes. We have Mini 60, OK Junior, the OK Senior class, and of course KZ2, the gearbox category that will be out here as well in beautiful Spain. Let's have a beautiful look at the racetrack around here in Zuera. It is absolutely beautiful at this part of the world, and the drivers have been practicing here over the course of the last few days, and they've been preparing for what promises to be an absolutely sensational race weekend. You can see there that the minis are already getting themselves prepared for the race action ahead of them. We'll give you a little bit of a rundown as to who each of the drivers are and in which class they are competing over the course of the afternoon a little later on as well. But there are some big names that have moved their way into the world of European competition. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they get on. So how is the day going to work here in qualifying for the race action here at Zuera? Well, it's very simple. We have a qualifying practice session for each of the groups in each of the individual classes. There is enough competitors in the mini class for just one. We have 20 drivers, so they will all go out on the circuit together for their time qualifying session. And when they head out on track, which is going to be any second now, in fact, I think I just heard the sound of the whistle behind me, so it's not going to be too long before they get out onto the circuit and have an explore around the track. Then we will have the individual classes broken up into groups of 24 drivers in each of the junior categories. They will go out in 3 separate groups, and that's when you'll get to see who the runners and riders are in each of the individual teams as well. And then we will do the same thing for the OK Senior category with world champions aplenty, both junior and senior, now racing on the same grid. And that's going to be fascinating. We're really excited to see how they're going to get on for the first time. And then at the tail end of the show, we'll have the KZ2 drivers going out on circuit. Not so many for this first round, but obviously the numbers have to increase somehow. One thing we do have to say, though, it's been fantastic to see the love and the warmth and the passion for the sport come back in the method in which we have done. Obviously, as you can see, it's not exactly as it used to be, and things are slightly different under the current circumstances of social distancing under the current COVID-19 virus, but we are doing a fantastic job. I have to say, it's wonderful to see all the teams, all of the staff, all of the track support crew. Everybody has been working tirelessly to make sure that this meeting is going to be a success. And it's wonderful to have the support of everybody that's been with us, including LeConte, who have been here with the tyres, giving us plenty of technical support. We've had amazing work from our friends at Alpine Stars again as well. And everybody within the crew, everybody who has travelled far and wide from all over the world to be here, whether they be a competitor, a mechanic, a sponsor, a team supporter, or whether it's a member of the track staff. It's wonderful to see everybody with that passion and that vibe and vitality to go racing again. It's not the easiest of circumstances, but we still have that passion. Great to see that we've got so many competitors here from all of the different classes. We're going to have the mini drivers getting out on circuit in just a moment, and it will be really exciting to see how they get on. Do, of course, send us your comments and anything that you have to share with us over the course of the qualifying session. We're here until about 3 o'clock today, local time, which is 2 o'clock if you're watching in the UK, and add or subtract the hours on depending on where you're watching from around the world. But it's the first time we've done a qualifying show of this kind. It's going to be fascinating to see that extra little bit of detail that we don't often get at these race meetings. And obviously a lot of drivers and teams you'll have heard many times before say, if it hadn't been for qualifying, we probably would have had a better weekend. Well, now you're going to get to see some of that secret ingredient to the weekend in action. And around this Zuera circuit in particular, qualifying is very extreme. Let's go to our trackside picture and we can see a little bit of what we're talking about. I was actually deep in conversation with the world champion, Lorenzo Travasanuto, a little earlier today, and he was telling me one of the big factors around this circuit is the temperature of the water in the engines. Now, obviously, air temperature and track surface temperature affects it big style. Here are the qualifying practice participants for the mini category. You can cheer on your favorite through this timed qualifying session, and obviously you'll get to see the chrono come up on the screen during the session itself. We are actually in the qualifying practice at the moment. As you can see, time is ticking down, but as has become the norm in all of these classes, the drivers tend to wait 1990s Formula One style. They wait until the bitter end of the session to come out on circuit because they don't want to overwork the tyres. And this is what I was finding out from Lorenzo Travasanuto when I was in conversation with him a little earlier on. He was telling me that there's a big factor in terms of water temperature within the engine. Now, obviously, the more air temperature increases, the more track surface temperature increases, the more the engine temperature increases. That affects how the water obviously cools the engine. And the hotter it gets, the harder it is for drivers to pull away out at the front. So it's not likely, if we get a hot race, that we're going to see drivers dominating out in front, which is great for us as spectators. It means we get plenty of overtaking and lots of good battles. That's what we want to see. So to a certain extent, we want to see a bit of a sweet spot in terms of engine temperature and water temperature to see if we can get that great battle. But even in the minis, it's going to be very close. We've got drivers who have traveled from far and wide in this category, from the Netherlands, from Italy, from Poland, from Finland, from France, from Russia, from Croatia, and also from Japan, of course, as well as a fair few of the local drivers here from Spain, of course, who know the circuit very well, and they're definitely the drivers to watch in this particular category. As you can see, the competitors are now heading out on the circuit, so they are basically going en masse as well. You don't tend to see too many karts going out one at a time, and that is largely because the tow around this circuit, again, as many of the drivers have been telling me, is very crucial around this particular circuit as well. If you've got a good tow and you've got a good draft with another driver, you're definitely going to get a very strong run. And in qualifying in particular, that is very crucial. So the competitors are out on circuit, and we're going to see them as they run in formation. This is what you're going to be treated to over the course of the weekend. Great to see. And we'll obviously have plenty of great race action to come from the competitors. Great to see so many of you watching along already. And obviously, we're going to see some truly spectacular race action from them. But this is what the drivers like to do. They try to get themselves into a decent position on the racetrack because they know which drivers are going to be quick. They know which ones they'll want to work with over the course of the qualifying session. So they like to gain track position. But as you can see from this particular circuit, and a lot of the drivers have been telling me this circuit is very fast. It's very open. It's quite flat, so you can get good purchase off the corner. And I was walking the circuit this morning, actually, and it's interesting to note that as it is quite flat and as it is quite open, there's a lot of corners where you don't tend to see a lot of drivers straying towards the curbs. The curbs are essentially there for decoration in some parts of the course because you're trying to follow the kart in front of you, but the faster line is actually towards the middle of the corner. The marbles get very, very tricky on the outside of any circuit, but there's a lot of big stops. Here's the hairpin where you've got a big stop, and then you're back on the throttle again. But then there's a nice combination of corners coming up. Now, this hairpin is quite a long one. It takes a long time to get through, but you're opening and blending the throttle as you go through. Then there's a tight right kink. Now, that's a very important corner to get right. You can lose a good 2 to 3 tenths of a second in one lap if you get that slightly wrong. Then you've got the tight left-hander in here, which feeds out into a hairpin, opens out on the exit. Now we've got this combination of 3 apexes coming up to the right-hand side. 1, 2, 3, and they all kind of flow together in formation. The third one being the tightest apex. Then you come into the left flick, and that drags you out onto this final turn, and it opens on the exit. So the initial turning point is quite tight, but still quite quick, and then it opens out. So we could see quite a few fights to the finish line over the course of the weekend, and that's, of course, exactly what we want to see. Now, as they come across the line to complete the first flying lap, Dmitry Medvedev for the Energy Course team has gone up to the top of the table from CRG's Christian Kostoja. And then we have Maciej Gladij, the Polish driver for Parolin, in third place, just in front of the Settler Kart Republic of Kian Nakamura Berta, the Japanese driver. Now, he's one to keep an eye on. He's been very, very quick of recent times. You can see him there, actually, the 827, as he runs in formation in there behind his teammate. Now, this is going to be an interesting pair of drivers to watch because, to be fair, the Team Driver Racing Kart squad have worked very closely in formation. That's Kian Nakamura Berta and Mark Kastelich. The two karts together are probably going to be joined at the hip for most of this weekend, but we'll need to keep an eye on Dmitry Medvedev. He is currently the fastest within this group, but Christian Kostoja of the CRG team is right in the mix there as well. Plus, you have Maciej Gladij of Parolin. You've also got the local drivers to keep an eye on. For Kart Republic's Hispania, you've got Denis Kurevali. He's definitely very quick around this circuit, knows Zuera very well, as does Luna Flusha, who is here also in a Kart Republic chassis. One to watch and has obviously been very, very quick in her native Spain. has been the National 11 front runner for a couple of years now. So stepping up to Mini 60, it is a big jump. You've got to remember that these karts are obviously very, very different compared to what we've seen in the Cadet and 11 leagues here in Europe. But the Mini 60 is a bit of a jump up, and it is a step up for these youngsters. But this is majorly one of the first European competitions for the Mini 60 category. Normally it's nationally homologated, but this is the first time really that it's been seen at this level of competition. The FIA currently doesn't have a Mini 60 category and is unlikely to. So the fact that we've got one here for Champions of the Future, it's a real opportunity for a lot of these kids to get used to the lifestyle of the FIA paddock, because the next step after Mini 60 for a lot of these drivers, of course, is the OK Junior category, straight into direct drive. And that's where it's going to be very, very interesting for them. They get to know the mode of the paddock, they get to know the flavour of the racing, they understand what the nature and the culture of the paddock is from a very early age, and that's to assist them in order to get a little bit more familiar with the world of international karting. Fascinating to see it in operation. But Matviv is still your fastest. We've got 22 seconds left, so let's go down trackside and have a look and see how Dimitri Matviv is getting on out at the front of the field. He's actually going to find it very close in with Adam Hideg, the Hungarian, has actually come up. So Adam Hideg has come up into second place now, the Hungarian, with a few seconds left on the timing screen. Christian Kostoya in third, Mark Kastelic, then Len Nies and Denis Kurivali from Luna Flusha and Filippo Sala, then Maciej Gladic and Kieran Thijs, and then we have Kia Nakamura-Berta in 11th place in front of Louis Leveau from Hugo Marti and Mikel Edea, from Daniel Dalakian and Franciszek Lasota, Thomas Kinsey and Michel Tayati. No sign yet of Heitor Delagnol and Kimi Tani, unfortunately. We hope they're going to come out at some point, but I know that not every driver in the rankings has been able to make it here for various different travel reasons. I do apologise. My face mask seems to have snapped on one side. That's not very good, is it? It's not the best situation. Hopefully we won't get too many shots of me on camera looking a bit foolish. I do apologise, everybody, but Dimitri Matviv is out in front at this precise moment in time. Then Adam Hideg, the Hungarian, in second place from Christian Kostoya. Now Kia Nakamura-Berta shoots up into second position, just a whisker in front of Adam Hideg. I did say he was going to be a front runner. Luna Flusha has come through up into fifth position now as well. She's right up in there behind Christian Kostoya, her countryman. And then Maciej Gladic in sixth position as the checkered flag comes out from Mark Kastelic, Denis Kurivali, Len Nies and Filippo Sala. Very close in there, though, at the front end of the field. Half a second covering most of the top 10. So very, very tight in there. And Dimitri Matviv's lap is a 1 minute 9.471. So very close in together. Great to see how tight it was there between the mini drivers. Dimitri Matviv running well. Kia Nakamura-Berta in second place by 0.029. So keep an eye on this Japanese talent. He's definitely going to be a strong one over the course of the weekend. But as you can see, as the mini qualifying practice has already come to a closure and the checkered flag is out, and obviously the drivers are returning back into the paddock, the junior drivers are now in the holding area. So let's have a look at some of the runners and riders in the Junior Championship and how they look in their new teams. The EKR karts of AC Motorsport will see Italian racers Federico Scalvini and Enzo Soares drive together. 6 drivers will race for Birolart at Zuera, as Timit Kucharczyk joins Adam Kowalski and Nicolai Violente. In the other side of the awning, Keanu Alajari will team up with Andrea Frasinetti and Christian Bertucca. A new chassis and a new union sees Leclerc by Lennox Racing, with fast drivers in Rafael Modanese, Ivan Dominguez and Platon Costin. CRG will run 4 junior drivers this weekend: Francesco Marenghi, Mickey Magnussen, Simone Bianco and Nico Lanalati. Flying the Spanish colours for DPK Racing will be 4 drivers: Nacho Tuñón, Nicolás Solov, Fernando Sotogallegos and Dario Cabanelas. Xspirit comes into 2020 with the talents of Guillermo Delgado and Oscar Wirtz alongside Lucas Samalisto and Arthur Rojon. The racing means a tough year ahead for Maxime Furon-Castellin and Jonathan Waywat. The biggest team on the grid at Zuera is Kart Republic. Alex Powell, Brando Badoa, Igor Sapil and Zachary David lead the way. Due de Decker joins the team alongside Matias Ferreira and Emogenia Fittipaldi from Brazil and Ugo Chukwu from the United States. Lucas Flusha brings local insight to the squad, whilst Italian aces Alfio Spina and Nicola Lacorte team up with British star Arvid Lindblad. Racing in Rosberg Academy colours is Norwegian Martinius Stenshorn, whilst Singapore's Christian Hole lines up with the Sauber karting team. Keeping it in the family, the Spanish arm of the team will field Santiago Valve and Juan Cota,
who will want a home win more than anything. 4 drivers take on the challenge for Cosmic as Ian Eichmans, Alexander Gubenko, Axel Malia and Ruki Liu prepare for battle. Another new team for 2020 is Pantano, with youngsters Matteo Capieto, Sonny Smith and Peik Abrahamson on board. Max Dodds joins the mighty Paralin squad alongside Giovanni Trentin and Valerio Rinicella. 5 men will lead Ricky Flynn Motorsport to supremacy as Edgar Anpilagov, Josh Koskenurfen and Dian Gauda lead the charge. Watch for their 2 newest recruits though, Rintaro Sato of Japan and Freddie Slater of Great Britain. Sody Kart have elected to race with just 2 men, but both Evan Gilter and William McIntyre are sure to be near the front. It's another strong lineup for Tony Kart in 2020, with Maxime Rennes, Aidan Neat, Karol Pazovic and Bruno Del Pino. But with new recruits in Harley Keeble, Aaron Rashepi and Tuka Tarpanen, it's hard to know which of Tony Kart's 7 drivers will be the fastest. VDK Racing are hoping for another strong year, and we'll see Alessandro Gusti, Augustin Bernier, Ariel Elkin and Maxim Verbruge in action. Ward Racing continue to produce great talent as Artem Sevryukin is joined by Maximilian Popov, Kirill Kutskov and Jokubas Bagdonovicius. But Seveda Simkus, Julius Dinesen and Konstantin Krapin are also part of the Ward Racing culture, and all of them are ready to win. Also, keep an eye on Miguel Perro, who'll hope to convert his local knowledge into victory, whilst the likes of Patrick Hakala, Akshay Bora and Lawrence Lesatua could be regular front runners throughout the weekend. There's also going to be a solid opposition from the likes of Flavio Oliveri, Gustav Wisniewski, Ben Silvesterson and Nico Lemberg, who are all beginning their quest to become a champion of the future.
Well, this is always one of the most fascinating parts of the opening element of the season. Looking at the drivers as they have changed into their different overalls and their new teams and their new squads. They're learning new materials and resources coming into their new campaign. And it just gives us a real reboot and a nice flavour. It's great to see some of the drivers who have moved across from different teams to move into a new operation for the 2020 season. And I have to say, it really increases the level of intrigue and the dynamic within that field. And there are so many drivers that have ended up in a completely different squad to where they were in the 2019 season. And we saw quite a few drivers in OK Junior across the spread of the motorsport spectrum doing a fair job towards the end of the season, but some of them have just decided it's time for a change. You need to refresh things a little bit, and you need to come into a new culture and start a new way of thinking. And that's exactly what these junior drivers have gone. If we look down in the pit lane, we can see that a lot of these guys are obviously getting themselves ready for a very hot day out there in Zuera. Time is about to start ticking for the junior practice, but again, don't expect to see them all blast out of the pit lane in one go, because they're obviously going to be waiting a little bit on their tyres to see how things are likely to fare. So it's obviously going to be very, very interesting for the competitors out there as they get themselves essentially ready for a fascinating dynamic and a really exciting challenge ahead of them. But the motor racing here over the course of the season has obviously been reduced a little bit for this Champions of the Future for the first season. There were going to be 3 rounds initially, but the current world situation has dropped us to 2. Our second one will be in October before we hopefully return in 2021 for a full-on Champions of the Future campaign. But it's a good way to start the ball rolling and obviously to see how the drivers and the teams are going to prepare for all of the action ahead of them. And we're really excited to see how everything is going to fare. It's been fantastic to see how all of the drivers have got on, and they literally have come from far and wide and from all over the motorsport spectrum, all over Europe. A few of the drivers, unfortunately, have not been able to make it in every single case, so some of the names that you would have seen in our Spotter's Guide rundown a few moments ago might not necessarily be present here, but certainly the intention was for them to be here, so it was always going to be very, very difficult to get everybody here under the current circumstances, but they've all done a fair job, and it's great to see how close it's been through the practice sessions. Now we'll get to see a little bit more with the junior drivers in their particular category. This battle for pole position, this is what everybody wants. You need to be within the top 10 overall times, because the way that the grids are split up into the different heat groups, if you're in the overall top 10, you've got a great chance to win heats because you don't have to do too much work working your way through the field. Now, because the groups are split into 24 drivers in the manner of junior and 23 drivers in OK, you're actually not going to have, in theory, too much of a traffic issue over the course of qualifying. However, that's more easier said than done because obviously drivers want to use each other for tows and for drafting. So that's also an interesting factor. But it also means that hopefully the heats tomorrow won't be quite so congested. There'll be a couple of moments at the start, but if drivers settle into a good rhythm in that first 2 or 3 laps of the heats, then you'll get to see a little bit more of how the fluidity of the race will sort itself out, essentially. Now, we do have a slight issue as you've noticed in terms of the schedule, if you've been on our website, championskarting.com, in that the first heats of the day are actually going to come straight after qualifying. Now, if you're here at Zuera, that's absolutely fine, because you'll be annoyed and irritated by my voice all afternoon, because I'll be here trackside making sure that I do the normal thing I do. Unfortunately, for those of you watching at home, you'll have to wait until tomorrow morning when we go live again at 10:15 in the morning local time here in Spain to go racing again. So what we'll do, obviously, is we'll keep an eye on everything that's going on in the qualifying heats this afternoon, straight after qualifying, and then we'll give you plenty of updates and information ready for the races tomorrow. The juniors are getting themselves ready for the start now. All of them I can see from my position here at the commentary box to my right. They are now getting themselves in the carts and ready. And this is essentially a waiting game. In the junior category in particular, the carts, the drivers tend to wait around for a fair amount of time, actually, because they want to make sure that they are not pushing the tyres too hard, especially as the day wears on. The later into the day we get, the higher the air temperature gets and the higher the track surface temperature gets. So when you're talking about 31, 32 degrees Celsius, roughly, in terms of air temperature, excuse me, I'm still getting used to these, 31 to 32 degrees Celsius air temperature, you're tending to be talking about 48 to 49 degrees Celsius track temperature. That's a massive increase of about sort of 18, 19 degrees Celsius. But that obviously affects the whole balance of the kart. And obviously the tyres are so important, and the data that these guys have been working on for the last couple of days here at the circuit, a lot of drivers are still learning this circuit for the first time. I was speaking to one of the competitors within the KZ2 category in particular. Brandon Nilsson was telling me, he hasn't been here for quite a fair while. And it's a long time since he drove it in a direct drive. So a lot of the guys are basically learning the circuit for the first time almost, and certainly for the first time in quite a fair while. So the drivers are doing everything they can to kind of learn the circuit as they go. And it's very tricky around this Zuera circuit. So let's go down into the paddock. Let's go down onto the pre-grid and have a look at how the drivers are getting on. So obviously we're going to see how the juniors are getting prepared. You can see how hot it is even from here. The heat haze off the top of the circuit is very extreme here for the junior drivers, but they're not going to go out too early. So it's going to be obviously a very, very important part of making sure that the balance is good. According to the timing screen I've got in front of me, the air temperature is 21 degrees Celsius. It certainly feels more than that already from where I'm sitting. I wouldn't be surprised if my commentary box temperature is almost 31 degrees Celsius, the way it currently feels. But it probably doesn't help that I'm wearing black today. I'll have to try and make a different fashion choice tomorrow. However, dry conditions and bone dry surface means that obviously the drivers are going to get the absolute maximum from this circuit straight off the bat. And that means we're going to see plenty of exciting racecraft from them over the course of the next 48 hours. And of course, by the time we get to the checkered flag next time out, it's going to be very interesting to see which of the drivers from this particular qualifying practice group are going to be towards the front. Let's give you a rundown of who's in this particular group as they get ready to go racing in the OK Junior category. You now know the runners and riders and the positions that they are going to be in terms of their squads. But now I can tell you who in each of the individual groups are going to be out on circuit. So for this first QPG, or qualifying practice group as it is, Flavio Olivieri is going to come out for the Newman Motorsport team. Edgar Anpilagov and Dion Gauda will represent the Ricky Flynn team as they come out onto the circuit. Sonny Smith, the Thai racing driver, is here for Pantano. And then we have Laurens Lesatua for LLK Belgium. He'll be in the mix along with Axel Malia of the Cosmic Racing Department squad. And then for CRG, you'll have the likes of Mickey Magnussen and Simone Bianco. Karol Pancevic for Tony Kart will be out there, as well Johnny Waywat, the Forza Racing driver. He keeps giving me that cheeky grin of his whenever he's in the paddock. Great to see him once again. Elon Rashepi is here for Kart Republic. Maxwell Dodds managed to catch a quick word with him after his practice session, and as always with Max Dodds, he's got a massive beaming smile on his face. He's full of confidence, full of exuberance as well in the new Parallel. It really seems to be coming well for him. Last year, towards the end of the season, results were starting to come, but now he's really getting into his stride at Parallel, and he seems very, very comfortable. We've got 3 drivers from Birolart, all in the same session. 4 drivers in actuality, because we've got Chiano Alajari, Andrea Frassinetti, Christian Bertucka, and then you also have Adam Kowalski, the Czech driver, all in the same lineup for qualifying. Now, that can be an advantage and a disadvantage in terms of a qualifying practice group. Teammates will obviously have that psychological edge and that little game that they like to play with each other as to which one is the fastest. But at the same time, it's actually handy to have a teammate within your qualifying practice group, because over the course of the 2, 3, 4 laps that you run in formation, you can work with each other. You can sort of swap over halfway through, and one drafts one and the other drafts the other. You can have that team element. Some teams don't employ it at all. Some of them are absolutely religious by it. Then we have the Kart Republic Motorsport drivers from Brando Badua, Igor Sapil, and Alfio Spina. Now, there are multiple colour schemes within the Kart Republic ordering. I should point that out straight away. I'm fairly sure we have the colours of TB Racing within there, which is the McLaren Customer Racing. So you're going to see that familiar papaya orange on a kart, which looks absolutely sensational. The Cetilar colours are down there as well. That's one of the EKR karts coming out onto the circuit. Now, that looks to me like Enzo Soares, who has decided to become the first driver of OK Junior in Champions of the Future history to go out onto the circuit in a qualifying practice run. So that's a little bit of history made there for Enzo Soares. And he, of course, is one of the local drivers, so it's really good to see him putting on a fabulous show. Who else is going to be out in this one? The Rosberg Racing Academy driver, Martinius Stenshorn, the Norwegian. He's only just started being represented under the Rosberg Racing Academy colours for this season. But it's good to see him out there on the circuit in those very now famous colours. They only first appeared back in 2018, and now they're pretty much a staple of the karting community. Ivan Dominguez is on the circuit at some point today in this next group, and he is in the CL by Lennox racing team. For those who want to know what CL stands for, it stands for Charles Leclerc. Yes, he is involved in the karting world now with his own chassis, and it's going to be fascinating to see him. There you can see the 87 actually coming out onto the circuit. Ivan Dominguez in the Charles Leclerc chassis, one of the latest big-name drivers in the world of motorsport to dabble in karting chassis manufacturing, and it's fabulous. We've seen so many big names from the world of motor racing build a kart chassis or have a hand in it in some way, shape or form. Robert Kubica has dabbled, so has Fernando Alonso, Daniel Ricciardo, and obviously back in the day, so too did Lewis Hamilton in the turn of the century. Certainly the sort of 2008, 2009 seasons, it was a long time ago now, but it was under the CRG, the Tonini group, many years ago. But great to see the drivers out on circuit. What a glorious sight. They don't need the full 8 minutes, do they? They've obviously decided we're going to come out when we are going to come out and not before. So they decide that they only need half a session. It's been the way for so many years now, and it's become kind of the culture of OK Junior qualifying, essentially. But the drivers are now getting themselves around the circuit. Enzo Soares will immediately go to the top of qualifying practice by virtue of the fact that he went out before anybody else. And as soon as one or two drivers decided, right, I'm not waiting around anymore, I'm going to get a fast lap in. And Enzo Soares' first lap is a 104.259. Now, I reckon we're going to get into the 103s for qualifying without any problem at all. We might even dip into the 102s. So it's going to be fascinating to see how the competitors crack on. As you can see, a few drivers are still waiting for a perfect gap in the traffic, and this is going to impede some of the drivers that have decided to go for it on their first flying lap, because obviously they're looking for track position, but they also want to get a good toe in the draft. They want to follow a fast driver, and this is the difficulty with time qualifying. Strategy is very hard to get right, and a lot of weekends can be made or broken by getting it absolutely spot on in the qualifying session. Now, we need to keep an eye on the drivers towards the top 3 or 4 positions in the overall standings. Igor Sapil has gone straight to the top, by the way, on a 101.956. Well, that shows you just how quick they're going to go. And Keanu Alajari is there in second position immediately on a 102.1. So they come through. Brando Badua goes straight into third position ahead of Enzo Soares. Johnny Waywat just gets a solid banker lap in. Karol Pazovic is now fifth in front of him. Then Simone Bianco in seventh. Kowalski, Paolo Olivieri, and Axel Malia in the top 10. And there are still plenty of qualifying laps to come from these guys. So That's absolutely fascinating to see already the early stages of this qualifying session. Do send us your messages ready for tomorrow. We'll try and get as many of them read out in the early part of tomorrow, and send us your predictions as well as to who we are likely to see out at the front end of the field. You can send us, obviously, you can make sure to bookmark us and like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're watching to us via YouTube on Telemundi Media. And make sure you bookmark championskarting.com in your web browser, whichever one it is that you use, and then you'll be able to follow us all the way through the weekend. We have got about 1 minute and 20 left of the qualifying session. It's only in those final few seconds that we really get to see the tone of the grid likely to be set, but obviously it's going to be very, very tricky to see who is going to get that top spot. The laps are now starting to come in. Badua has now gone to the top, just a whisker in front of Igor Sapil by 0.153, but I don't think the ultimate lap times have started just yet. I think it's the next lap that's really going to be the one that makes the difference. So let's go back over to the track side, and we will be able to catch an eye on that last minute of qualifying, because that's the one that's really going to set the tone for the pace of qualifying. Fascinating to see how they're going to go. 40 seconds on the clock. Brandon Badua first in the group. As I said before, keep an eye on the top 5 in each of these groups, because as long as they're in the overall top 5, overall top 10, they're the ones that are going to be making the real playbook when it comes to the starts of the heats this afternoon. And obviously you're trying to get as many decent positions in the heats as possible, so you don't want to do too much work early doors. You don't want to throw your hat into the ring too early by getting yourself into fisticuffs. Now, a couple of the drivers are going to cross the line with about 10 seconds to go. Sapil goes back to the top. Up to the top now comes Martinius Stenshorn. So Stenshorn in the Rosberg goes straight up to the top on a 101.274. And that's nearly 0.2 of a second quicker than Igor Sapil. The checkered flag is out, and I think everybody has just about got through before it. So they are now on their final flying laps each. And they only get one crack at this, so they better make sure they get it right. You're watching out on the circuit there, the number 10, Flavio Olivieri, for the Newman Motorsport team with the Tony Kart chassis. And the famous Vortex combination, Tony Kart and Vortex. No problem at all as they battle together. You're also looking at a nice pair of drivers out there. That looks like Maxwell Dodds chasing after the Charles Leclerc machine of Ivan Dominguez as they battle away for position. So let's see the final drivers come over the finish line now. These last parts of the lap, tight and twisty, and then they come into this final straight. Is there going to be Igor Sapil at the front? No, Stenshorn is going to stay there. Badua goes second, though, straight up into second position. Is there going to be a final push for pole position from Stenshorn? He remains there on a 101.274. Lawrence Lesatua comes up to 5th place now. Is Dion Gauda going to get an improvement in his final lap out on the circuit? No, he does not, so he remains in 6th place for Ricky Flynn. So it's Martinius Stenshorn that's at the front end of the field then. Brando Badua in 2nd place from Igor Sapil, and then Edgar Anpiligov from Laurence Lesatua, very close in that top 5, about a quarter of a second separating all 5 of them. And that gives us a very interesting indication as to what we're going to get for the rest of the weekend for the OK Juniors. Dion Gauda was in 6th place in the end from John Waywat and Alfio Spina. And then we had Flavio Olivieri in position there in the top 10. Really good performance from an independent there to run there in 9th position. Just a whisker in front of the British driver Max Dodds in the Paralin. A fair performance there in the top 10, and it's very, very even, very close. And that obviously gives us plenty to work with over the course of the weekend. You can also see that Simone Bianco is there from Ivan Dominguez. 13th position, Giovanni Trentin even, and Sonny Smith. Adam Kowalski is in there with Enon Reshepi as well, so that'll be interesting to see how they get on. Christian Bratuca and Keanu Alajari, the 2 Birolart drivers, running close together, but it didn't actually help them in terms of getting the fastest lap that they wanted out of it. Axel Malia and Nico Lemberg from Mickey Magnussen and Andrea Francinetti, and then we had Enzo Soares. Interestingly, no Karel Pazovic. What happened to the pole? He seems to have dropped all the way down to 24th position. Not a great run from the pole, all the way down at the back, and I don't think he was expecting to be all the way at the low end of the field. So already some head scratching going on there at Tony Kart to figure out why Karel Pazovic was not quite on the pace we thought he'd have. So it'll be fascinating to see how the heats unfold for him tomorrow. Probably plenty of overtaking to come, I would say, from the Polish driver. That, of course, is the first group of participants in the junior category. There are still 2 more groups to come. So looking at the lap times then, we've got Stenshorn at the front end of the field and Brando Badua second, along with Igor Sapil and Edgar Anpiligov. I have a feeling that that little gap that has built up there, Stenshorn is what, 0.138 of a second in front of Brando Badoa. I would not expect him to have Sepil directly behind him by the end of practice. I think a few more drivers will probably squeeze into that little gap that he's got there in position. And that's obviously going to change the dynamic of things quite importantly, because you're going to see several drivers from the next two groups. The circuit is likely to get faster as the day wears on. You've got to remember that we're doing qualifying at a very different time of day to what we're used to doing in the RGMMC paddock. Normally it takes place around the sort of 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock mark. But we've started qualifying at midday, so the track temperature and the track surface is very different to what a lot of the drivers in these paddocks are used to. And that makes it, it presents itself with its very own interesting challenges. Even in the FIA paddock, normally, qualifying takes place on the afternoon and evening of a Friday rather than midday. So this is an actually very fascinating new dynamic for a lot of the teams and drivers to cope with. And obviously, as the day progresses, the circuit's going to get a little bit faster because you can really dial into the setup. There were so many drivers who I class as, you know, the world's elite in the karting world, who came off their final practice session this morning and they were scratching their heads, they had their hands on their hips, they were looking down at the kart as if to say, what on earth do I have to do to get faster? So it is going to be fascinating. I think there's going to be a bit of a change of the guard in the junior category and possibly in the senior category as well, which will give us plenty of fascinating scope for motorsport over the course of the next 2 days. If this is your first indoctrination to the world of elite karting, as I know several of you have obviously been getting your motorsport fix wherever you possibly can, this is going to be interesting because you've got to remember that from these paddocks and the categories of karting at this level, all, apart from maybe one or two of the current Formula One grid, came from these categories of karting at this level. So it is fascinating to see that essentially the drivers you're watching out there over the course of today and Saturday and Sunday as well are the future Formula One, IndyCar, Le Mans 24 Hours, Formula E, W Series drivers. These are the competitors that you're going to be talking about 5 to 6 years from now, potentially in cars. But then there are other drivers out there who are probably going to be the elite of karting for the next few years. Look at the likes of Lorenzo Travazanuto and Pedro Hiltbrand in there with their teammate Joe Turney. All of them at Tony Kart for 2020. That is an absolutely incredible combination, and I have to say, I'm really excited to see how that actually plays out. But there are so many drivers in the senior field to keep an eye on. You've got the young whippersnappers coming up who are now recently turned 14 who can compete at senior level. But then you've obviously got the old guard who want to make sure they're still at the front end of the field, especially with a few names moving on to other things. And by the way, we do wish a fair few of our very popular characters from last year's OK Senior Paddocks in RGMMC very best for their 2020 campaigns. The likes of Gabriele Mini, Dino Beganovic, Gabriel Bortoletto, Lorenzo Flusha. So many incredible drivers from last year who have now made the big step up and are going on to the next ladder of the motorsport world. So good luck to all of you. We miss you all very dearly, but do please pay us a visit when you get the opportunity to. Maybe when times are a little bit easier for us to cope with. Let's go down into the pit lane and have a look at the next group of drivers, the second practice group for OK Junior. There are so many talented competitors in this field. The first group already gave us about a quarter of a second between the top 10. I've got a sneaky feeling that this second group of competitors in junior are actually going to be even closer together. And there's definitely going to be a very tight spread amongst the top 10. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if less than a quarter of a second covered that top 10 overall in junior qualifying practice. It is very, very tight, very close indeed. And obviously you're going to see all sorts of competition from these guys as they move forward. So I'm hoping that our team is ready. We can head down and have a look at what life is like as the karts are ready for that green flag to be waved down in the pre-grid of the junior category. And it's also worth pointing out, I have to say, full credit to the drivers and the mechanics who've been working very hard to ensure, in cooperation with us all at RGMMC, that all of the social distancing rules have been in place and adhered to. It's been really great to see that, you know, all sorts of new ideas and combinations have come up for interacting with people to keep that social distancing in place. I've seen all sorts of funny and interesting handshakes over the course of the weekend. I've even seen one chap who's managed to find a really long pole of some kind and he kind of keeps it with him like a walking stick, and he holds it out to handshake people with it. It's a fabulous idea, and it's great. It's bringing people, a smile to people's faces, and it's wonderful to see how everybody is just adapting to the new situation, the new environment that we're in. And racing can still take place in a fascinating style. Now, the whistle's just gone, so hopefully that means that the drivers will be able to head out onto the circuit very shortly indeed. I think that's the 3-minute whistle that they get just to give the mechanics a chance to step aside and clear away. Obviously, no tools allowed in the pre-grid. They obviously have to make sure that it's just one driver, one mechanic, as always, and then they obviously have their awnings. And obviously there are rules and regulations within the awnings as well. We've obviously had all sorts of fantastic faces and people within the paddock as well, making sure that they adhere to all the rules and regulations. And it's really great. We've got teams and operations from all over the world who have come here to race as Champions of the Future in 2020. And it just shows that eagerness to be racing and that thirst of competition and that eagerness to compete has been brought to the forefront once again. So we're obviously getting ourselves ready for the second qualifying practice group. Just a quick reminder, of course, Martini Stenshorn at the top of the first group, Branda Badua second in front of Igor Sapil. And then within the top 6, we also have Edgar and Piligov, Lawrence Lesatua and Dion Gauda within that top 6. Very, very close indeed amongst that group. But obviously there's definitely going to be a tighter top 6 by the time the third junior group is done. The second group is about to get underway. And of course, they'll be given the same regulations, 7 minutes, but knowing the junior drivers, they won't use all of them. They'll probably only use, I would imagine, 4 minutes worth of the qualifying session, because you've got to keep these tyres safe. Obviously, you've got to make sure that everything is perfectly usable. Some of the tyres, obviously, they have been working very, very hard on tyre temperatures and getting good data from them, making sure that they are obviously to a peak temperature and they are operating at the right maximum, and they can obviously get the most out of them. You see, this is how much I'm talking. I'm losing my mask. I do apologise. I'm nattering away here. Obviously, 1 or 2 people will make sense of it, but I'm sure nobody else will. Martin Stenshorn at the front end of this field. That is the final whistle, I think, to give the mechanics and the drivers a chance to get their karts started again. So we will head down for qualifying practice group 2. And obviously the 7 minutes of countdown will have us with plenty of entertainment and drama as that pole position gap becomes tighter. And the big question as we head into the second group is Martin Stenshorn going to hang on to that pole position with his time of 1 minute 1.2? Or is it going to be beaten? And I have to say, looking at the way things currently are, it is going to be a tough one for him to hold on to. The Norwegian, obviously very quick in that Kart Republic chassis, run under the colours of Rosberg Racing Academy. But I have a feeling there's going to be a very tight run for these competitors to run together. So can he hold on to it? That's obviously the main talking point. Branda Badua and Igor Sapil, very close together. But looking at the interesting thing is that looking at the spreads of their sector times, you've actually got Martini Stenshorn, the fastest driver in the first sector, but I don't think he was the fastest driver in each of the corresponding sectors. We'll have a look out onto the circuit as the drivers come out for their second group. There is just a slight pause before they do so, which is why we're not going across to that picture just a moment, but we will do very shortly. But the top 6 drivers in the first qualifying practice group, very, very evenly matched, but some drivers are actually slightly quicker than others in that first sector. Now, the first sector of this circuit is almost flat to the throttle the whole way. That run through the first corner is going to be fascinating once we start racing, because you'll have 2x2 hurrah amongst all of the rows all the way through. But that first corner is very open, very fast, and pretty much flat to the throttle if you get the line right. So that first corner and the first laps of each of these races is going to be fascinating, because drivers will obviously want to get started very quickly, get themselves into a good track position. They want to be nice and even and keep the format flowing. And it's always very, very difficult to get that balance over the course of proceedings. So the drivers are obviously having to work tooth and nail, full concentration mode engaged in that first turn. So let's head down now to the pit lane. We'll switch to our pit lane cam as we look out onto the circuit, and we should be able to get a bit of a handle on what is happening there, and a whole new group of drivers out onto the circuit. So obviously the competitors in the junior category very, very tightly knit together. You can see straight away to the left-hand side, the 30 seconds board has gone up, so it's not going to be long before qualifying begins. Do not be surprised at all if when the time actually starts ticking down, nobody moves. It's unlikely that they will do. But I can run you through the participants in this particular group. Both of the Sodi Kart drivers are in this particular group of drivers, Evan Giltaire and William McIntyre. And both of them have a very good chance of pole position, actually. McIntyre was third in the earlier practice session today. He said at the start of the day he wasn't too sure where he was going to end up and was a little bit nervous about it. But then after practice, he was beaming and smiling, going, we're quicker than I thought we'd be. Brilliant. Matteo Capieto is now part of the new Pantano team. For those of you who like a good name drop, yes, you'll probably have guessed that that is connected to Giorgio Pantano, former karting legend, and of course is now a karting team boss. Out onto the circuit, looks like the 36 is going out early doors. That is Servidas Simkus, the Lithuanian. So he will bring the Tony Kart chassis out onto the circuit first for the Ward Racing team, which seems to have 7 million drivers this year. There are so many competitors within the Ward Racing team, but they do pride themselves on being one of the friendliest places in karting to compete in. And it's great to see the team putting in such a fantastic show. When one driver decides to go out before all the others, you just got this fabulous picture of the sole mechanic making his way to the pit wall. And you've got the other drivers in the mix there. That number 27 on the front end of the group of drivers there is Freddie Slater for Ricky Flynn Motorsport. He's getting himself ready for his first RGMMC race as a OK junior driver. And that's going to be a fascinating weekend for him. Out onto the circuit goes Federico Scalvini, another of the EKR factory drivers. There's only 2 of them this weekend for what is also affectionately known as AC Motorsport. And the EKR factory team lining up with their competitors. Pete Abrahamson is the teammate of Matteo Capieto at Pantano, and those two are out together in this group. Ian Eichmans for the Cosmic Racing team will be on his own. We've already seen Servidas Simkus head out onto the circuit for Ward Racing, but Julius Dinesen, the Danish driver, will be out there for Ward as well. VDK Racing have Augustin Bernier, who I'm going to guess is related to Victor Bernier, who was our junior world champion back in 2018. I have a feeling he might be either the younger brother or cousin, but we'll obviously double check on that one. We don't want to make assumptions. Nikola Tsolov for DPK Racing, and then the Kart Republic chassis in the fantastic Fernando Alonso Racing colours. Aidan Neat for Tony Kart. Well, look, as soon as Ugo Chukwu decided he was going to go out, that was the catalyst for everybody else deciding, yep, if Ugo Chukwu's going out, I'm going out as well. No major shocks there. Just wait for a big name to go out, and then that's it. Everybody else joins in the fun. So also there on the circuit for the Tony Kart Racing team is the British driver Aidan Neat, who is really starting to adapt to international competition very quickly. Oh, we've got a kart out on the circuit already. Someone's pulled off. Now, we'll have to double check and see who that is, but that's a driver with no qualifying laps. Who is that? Straight away, that is the 70. That's the Kubica chassis of Timotis Kucharczyk. Goodness me, Timotis Kucharczyk has only just joined the Birolart team. He has his Kubica chassis. Something's gone terribly wrong for the pole. And he was one of my tips for a top 10 in qualifying as well. So hopefully they'll be able to get him started again. He's brought the kart back out onto the circuit. He's got to try now and straighten it up as Servidas Simkus gets the first flying lap out. Now he's got to try and push start it. Now he obviously can't get outside assistance. So he's now got to try and push the kart himself. Now this is rather chaotic now for Timotis Kucharczyk, because obviously qualifying is underway. Yellow flags are out. He's brought the kart back onto the circuit to try and get it started again. This is a rather precarious situation for Timotis Kucharczyk. And it's certainly not where he wanted to be. So a big problem there for the pole. And that is just about as disastrous as it is possible to be for the Polish driver. I don't mean to giggle, but bringing the kart back out onto the circuit to try and push start it again, and then not being able to do so, it doesn't help any driver out there, really. So 3 minutes to go in this timed qualifying session for the first ever Champions of the Future meeting. And just look at the backdrop. The beautiful mountain ranges here in Aragon, in northern Spain. It is a beautiful part of the world, this, and it's wonderful that we can come racing here for Champions of the Future. Ugo Chukwu gets his first lap in, and boom, straight up to the top on a 101.844. Now that is going to be a slight problem for him as he battles his way around the circuit. Arvid Lindblad's now gone to the top step. Ugo Chukwu in second place. And Rafael Modanese is in third position now in front of Freddie Slater. And then we have Valerio Menicella and Lucas Samalista in that top 6 early doors. Aidan Neate has come up to 7th place in front of Nikola Tsoloff. Maxim van Kastelen, one of the new drivers in at Forza Racing this year, the Luxembourger, is there in 9th position along with William McIntyre and Matteo Capieto, just on the outskirts of the top 10. And as you can see at the bottom of your screen, the lap times coming through, that shows you the distances between the drivers. Still about 0.4 of a second between the top 10, but I think that's going to get tighter as the time ticks down. Trying to get some news on Timotis Kucharczyk, and I haven't seen him come out onto the circuit, but then I also haven't seen Juan Cota out on the circuit, and I did see him earlier in the weekend, so they must have some kind of mechanical problem or something that has prevented him to get through. Now Valerio Vinicella's just gone second, scrub that. Freddie Slater now goes second fastest in front of Nikola Tsoloff, and then we have Arvid Lindblad in 4th position in behind Freddie Slater. So Ugachukwu, Tsoloff, Slater, Lindblad, Maxim van Kastelen now up to 5th position, then Valerio Menicella in front of Aidan Neate. So a very tight top 7 there. Ian Eichmans has now crept his way into the mix, and we've still got plenty of drivers trying to move their way further forward. But Ugachukwu, the American, straight out onto the circuit and straight up to the top of the timesheets, and it doesn't look like he's going to get beaten. But the big question is, can he gain a little bit more time? Because that lap time of his is a 1 minute 1.4. It's not quite fast enough to beat Martini Estension's earlier time at the moment. He needs a little bit more from this qualifying session. So let's go back trackside and see what the drivers are going to do in this final section of activity. They've got less than a minute of time qualifying practice now, so let's see what they can do out on circuit. Very tight stuff at the front end. Freddie Slater's just gone to the top. A 101.424 now. So that is good timing for Freddie Slater and the Ricky Flynn Motorsport team. Ugachukwu in 2nd place from Nikola Tsoloff, and then Arvid Lindblad in 4th position from Aidan Neate and Valerio Vinicella. Fernand Castellan, Eichmans, Rogion and Modanese now in the top 10. Up into 7th comes Timotis Kucharczyk. Well, not only has he got the kart started again, but he's come up into the top 10 straight away. No wonder he was eager to. 7th place, just getting past him now on the timing sheets, is Lucas Samalisto, and the checkered flag is out. So this is the opportunity now for the competitors. So they need to get their final flying laps in, and they need to make a really good stink of it. They've obviously got to push very hard indeed to move their way further forward. So these last qualifying laps coming in, but Slater at the top step. Now, that lap is a 101.424. It's not faster than Stenson, but it's certainly fastest in the group. Checkered flag is out. Are we going to see some final changes? Vernichella still in the top 6. Ugachukwu there in 2nd. Slater still 1st. Maxim van Kastelen creeps up into 7th place. Aidan Neate has gone up into 5th place. Great final charge from him. So Aidan Neate has put himself right up into the hunt at the final turn of it. Are there going to be any more final changes? It is going to be very tight there at the front end. Up to the top 5 comes Douwe de Decker and Timotis Kucharczyk. They both crept into the top 5 with their final qualifying laps. Timotis Kucharczyk was actually the fastest driver in the 2nd sector of the lap, would you believe? So after all of that panic at the start of qualifying, where he was desperately trying to push his kart back going again, not only did he get it started and get a lap in, but he went 5th quickest and was the fastest of all in the 2nd sector. That is baffling to observe Timotis Kucharczyk getting such a good time in there despite his problems. But the key factor there is that, yes, we saw Slater go faster than Ugachukwu and Tsoloff, but their fastest laps were a 101.4. They were not fast enough to compete with the Martini Estension lap set earlier on of a 101.2. So not at the same speed, not at the same level, and obviously that makes things easier for Martini Estension. The Rosberg team will have seen those lap times, and they will know that they have got the better run of it this time. So fascinating to observe, and obviously it means that things are going to be very close from that element of things. Hello to all those of you who are watching along at home via Telemundi Media. To our qualifying show, just gives you a little bit of a sneak preview as to what you're going to get over the course of Saturday and Sunday's races, and it also gives you a little bit more information, a little bit more depth from what you see. So there are the times on your screen now, blocking my beautiful face. Freddie Slater and Ugo Ugachukwu, 0.027 is the gap between them. Nikola Tsoloff in 3rd from Douwe de Decker and Timotis Kucharczyk. Arvid Lindblad from Aidan Neate. You can see just outside the top 12 there. Look at the battle all the way down to 23rd. Civitas Simkus in 23rd place, but Nicola Lacorte in the Cetelar colours for KR Motorsport there. 0.8 of a second covering the top 20 drivers. That is quite astonishing when you consider that the group only has 23, 24 names in there. I did notice, though, that the Kart Republic Spain driver, Juan Cota, was missing from the timing sheets, didn't set a lap, and I'm fairly sure I saw him over the course of the weekend. So I don't know whether they've had some kind of difficulty in practice or something has happened there, but it doesn't look as though Juan Cota has got a lap time in, which is unfortunate. So we now need to figure out what he can do from the back of the grid, if at all he gets to start. We certainly hope he does. Now we've got the third practice group coming up, the third qualifying practice session for the OK Junior category. And we know that the first group for Martini Extension slightly quicker. They got into the 101.2 mark and the 101.3. The second group only able to get a 101.4. This third group is going to be critical. I wonder if that is again to do with the rising temperatures. Is it that the fact that the circuit is obviously getting hotter, the air temperature getting hotter as well? That means it's going to be very, very difficult for one team and one engine to get an advantage over the rest of the competitors. It's always very, very difficult to get yourself up to the mark on that one. So obviously the teams and drivers have been preparing very, very hard for this weekend here at Zuera. A beautiful sunshine overlooks us here at the circuit, and you can see just how wonderful the Champions of the Future environment is already this weekend. Not exactly what we were planning in terms of obviously the social distancing side of things, but we still get to have a fantastic race meeting, and we're really looking forward to it. When the race action starts tomorrow at 10:15 local time, it'll be qualifying heats all the way through the day, and that'll take you through to about 6 p.m. local time. And then, of course, we have our finals day on Sunday, and that will take us through to 4 p.m. local time. So you guys enjoying your motor racing of the car variety, you can feed that in with all of your karting action as well. It's great to see them all back here once again for the Mini 60s, KZ2s, and then, of course, the OK categories in junior and senior derivations. And it's wonderful to see so many brilliant race drivers out there. Some of them, of course, are competing at this level for the very first time. One of the things I like about the start of a karting season, even though this year it's in July rather than in March, it's wonderful to see all of these new faces and new drivers and new characters in the paddock. Some of them, of course, who are returning to the paddock for the first time for a few years. Of course, a few years ago, we had Pietro Fittipaldi, and then we had Enzo Fittipaldi come through the paddock. Now we've got Emo Jr. Coming through, and he is actually here this weekend in this next qualifying practice group. And we caught up with him a little earlier with our television cameras, so hopefully in time for our social media channels and hopefully for tomorrow's broadcast as well, you'll be able to catch that interview as well as a few of the others that we've been able to do over the course of the weekend. And it's been great to see various personalities in the paddock as well, including, of course, the two-time Grand Prix World Champion Emerson Fittipaldi is here, really much enjoying himself and enjoying looking at the world of karting as it is now in the 21st century. And I have to say, it is fantastic seeing all of these amazing teams and all of these incredible colour schemes from the Birol Arts, from the CRGs, from the Kart Republics, from the Paralins, from the Cosmics, all of these incredible machines and colours flying around the circuit in the beautiful Spanish sunshine. I can't wait to see them racing, which will, of course, take place starting here this afternoon. For those who are wondering if we're going to be doing the qualifying heats for this afternoon, unfortunately, we have to change a few camera positions just from a technical viewpoint, just to keep you up to date with what's happening ready for tomorrow. And that's the reason why the qualifying heats this afternoon, for the first qualifying heats will not be broadcast. But, however, I will still be here trackside, keeping an eye on everything and commentating in my slightly strange style to all of the spectators and all of the mechanics and drivers here at the side of the track. So obviously everybody here at the paddock will still have the benefit of that entertainment and that nice warm-up for tomorrow. You guys can follow it all along on live timing this afternoon if you're on our website, championskarting.com. You'll also have a link to the live stream there ready for tomorrow as well. Once you're on the live stream, which is via YouTube, all you have to do is hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell. Every time you click a notification bell within our channel, it means that you'll get an email, you'll get a quick message, a ping to say that we're going live, so you'll never miss it. It's absolutely fantastic to see just how much of an enthusiasm and a warmth there is for our paddock and our community once again. But this third qualifying group for the OK Junior category, this is the critical one. This is the one that will decide who is going to be on pole position. In the next quarter of an hour or so, Martini Extension will figure out just how much work he's got to do. Will he have pole position, or will he be there towards the top 5. It's very interesting to see. But as the circuit gets hotter, I've got a sneaky suspicion he may well be able to hang on to his very slender advantage. Let's go down to our pictures trackside once again to give you a bit more of a flavour of what is happening down there in the holding area. All the teams and all the drivers obviously there for this third and final OK Junior practice group, all clustered in together into that pit lane. Obviously there's room for only one driver, one mechanic to each crew. And that obviously gives us plenty of entertainment and drama. I can see all of the competitors down there getting themselves ready for the action. The heat is really starting to pile in now. This is the difficulty for the drivers. Obviously, you've got to keep yourself hydrated. You've got to keep yourself very much up-tempo, and the energy levels have got to be high. But at the same time, you've obviously got to make sure that you're able to cope with all of the extremities and that pressure and that incredible intensity that you feel in the kart. It's always going to be very, very tricky within this particular mode, because the karting world, when you're racing a kart compared to when you're racing a car, is so much more physical. You feel everything so much more acutely and intensely. The drivers have been doing the best they can during the lockdowns in their various countries and principalities and wherever, trying to keep themselves in shape with the virtual world. The difficulty that they have, though, is that in karting, everything is so much more physical. There is not really the ability to bridge that gap physically in terms of training. And that's why the drivers, the second they got the opportunity to go out and test their karts, they took it, because it is so much more physical. A lot of the racing drivers in the world that are in cars and whatever, well, they can jump into a sim and they can start to speed up. It's not so easy if you're a kart racer, because everything is so physical. You're pulling several G and putting a massive load on the ribs and various parts of the body. So it's always much harder to keep that training standard up if you're a kart racer compared to if you're a racing driver in cars, because everything is so much more intense. You feel everything so much more acutely. And I've been speaking to many karting racers away from the race circuit via social media and whatever, and a lot of them have said, oh, it's been good fun and it's been good, a social opportunity for them to play their video games or their simulators with each of their colleagues, and even racing against their mechanics or whatever. And I've known a few kart racers that have taken the opportunity to pull in a few contacts and try and get out there with a few drivers from the real racing world. I myself actually managed to dabble in some sim racing over the course of lockdown. I ended up in a room with the likes of Billy Munger, Jamie Caroline, Enam Ahmed, who of course came through this paddock, and various others. And if I had stayed online another half hour, I would have been joined on the circuit by Charles Leclerc. How annoying is that I missed that opportunity? But that's just the kind of situation we've been presented with. That's the opportunities that you get to hang out with drivers virtually. And it's been great fun, and the drivers have really enjoyed it. But nothing for a kart racer replaces that experience of being there in the kart physically and really pushing the limits. You can do a lot of brain training via the simulator, but nothing can replace the energy and the adrenaline that you get from being out there on the circuit. I can hear that the whistle has just gone, so obviously the drivers are now waiting for their opportunity to get out on circuit, and this is the qualifying practice session that will decide who's going to start this first Champions of the Future event from pole position in the junior category. And there are so many competitors in this third group, I'll run through them in a moment, that could snatch that pole position away from Martinius Stenchon, but so much is at play here. And as the circuit gets hotter, it's going to be harder and harder to get to that lap time again that we saw from Stenchon. He obviously got everything nailed perfectly on his qualifying run in the first group. But the third group are at a severe disadvantage now, because they know, having seen the second group not quite get to that same speed, they've got to try and find that special ingredient that's going to bring them up to the front. So we'll drop down with our trackside camera now, and we'll have a look at what life is like again for this third group of drivers, and we'll see who is there to get ourselves ready for this next phase of the OK Junior qualifying group. And obviously these drivers are still very much hoping that they can get to pole position, but it is very tough at this stage. So obviously the competitors there now ready in position. I can see various contenders from the Tony Kart team. They've obviously all been put into the third qualifying group, and that's where we're going to get the advantage from them in terms of their teamwork strategy and simulation play out. They'll want to work together in the draft and move each other further forward. That's going to be fascinating to see how they get on. But there are so many competitors from the different teams that are there. That's the actual whistle gone now for the final few seconds board. I think that's the minute notification, so 1 minute to go before that qualifying group. And in this third qualifying practice group, obviously, you've got so many big names that have come up from the world of the mini categories and the domestic championships that they've done all around. So let's go down to that pit lane and have a look and see who is down there. And we'll run through all of the drivers in this third qualifying group. You can see the beautiful colours of the Alonso Racing colours of the DPK Racing squad, which essentially runs as the unofficial Alonso Racing team. I think there's even a tribute helmet there in the mix. So let's talk you through who is here. We have Alessandro Gusti of the Kart Republic persuasion. He's there in 11th, number 11, I should say, on the grid. Ricky Flynn have two representatives, Josh Koskenurfen and Rintaro Sato, who is the son of the Formula One ace Takuma Sato, of course. Alexander Gubenko for the Cosmic Racing Department. He is there, the Russian, in number 28. Guillermo Delgado for Xspirit, the Spanish driver, will have local knowledge of this place. It'll definitely help. Jokubas Bogdanovicius of the Ward Racing team, the Lithuanian. He seems to have started a bit of a trend as Kaya Sixnellis, who was with Ward Racing last year, of course, and now there's a whole crop of Lithuanian drivers who have gone exactly the same route and exactly the same way with the same team. Maxon Verbruge for VDK Racing, Nashotunyon for DPK Racing, and Eric Genet of the CRG operation. And yes, he is within Marc Genet's family, of course. Francesco Marenghi, another of the CRG drivers, and then the Tony Kart Squadron. And there are 4 of them in this one session, and they are 4 incredibly talented individuals. Maxime Rem, Bruno Del Pino, Harley Keeble, and of course, Tuukka Tarpanen. That's a name that a lot of people are keeping an eye on this year after he put in such a stunning performance in 2019. And people have the feeling that with him now in the Tony Kart factory team, if he's got a chance to take any opportunities in 2020 to get out in front, none of these drivers around him will see which way he went. And it is going to be tough. Also at Kart Republic, you've got the likes of Alex Powell, Emo Fittipaldi, Emo Jr., I should say, and Lucas Flusha, who's followed in the footsteps of his older brother, who's now in Formula 4, of course. And Lucas Flusha is now in the Kart Republic squad. Great to see him there. And I have no doubt he's going to be a race winner very soon indeed. Fernando Sotogalegos is part of the DPK Racing team. He's also down there, the Mexican, and it'll be very exciting to see what he can do for that team. The first kart heading out onto the circuit is the 35. That's Jokubas Bogdanovicius. So as Bogdanovicius heads out on the circuit, we'll talk through a few of the others out there. The Jamaican Alex Powell I mentioned already. At Xspirit Racing, we also have Oscar Wirtz, who is the younger brother of Charlie. And, of course, both of them are the younger sons of Alexander Wirtz. And he's been in and out of the paddock over the course of the last 18 months. Mummy Wirtz is here this weekend, and it's been great to catch up with them again. And finally got to meet Oscar for the first time yesterday. Great to see him and how he's settling into the Xspirit operation. He and his brother in the same team, but in different classes, of course. Matteo De Palo is here as well. For the he's in a Tony Kart, but he's under the banner of Joachim Ward. Also in the mix, we have Christian Ho. Now, we need to watch out for him for the Sauber karting team as Emo Junior Fittipaldi leads them out on the circuit. But it's the Sauber karting team we want to keep an eye on as well. They only have one representative in the junior category, but it is Christian Ho, the Singaporean, and he's definitely going to be one to watch. Aaron Garcia for DPK Racing, and then Santiago Valve is the privateer, and Nico Lanalati for CRG. Here come the squadron leaders. The 2 VDK drivers there out onto the circuit. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they get on. But this is the man up at the front of the queue we need to keep an eye on. Tuukka Tarpanen, a big name in this junior category for 2020. There are the DPK drivers, all in formation there. You can see them. Nacho Tunyon, Aaron Garcia, and also in the mix there is the 61, I think. That is Fernando Sotogalegos, the Mexican. So a fascinating combination of drivers. And as you can see, nobody's really going for their first flying lap yet. They want to make sure they've got decent track position, and they want to get their tyres up to temperature as well. So this is going to be fascinating. The dynamic that you get to see now for drivers just trying to position themselves around the circuit. But it draws a massive queue. For those of you who will have seen the shenanigans of the Italian Grand Prix qualifying session in Monza, this is the kind of environment where they learn that sort of craft. And it's quite commonplace as drivers try to put themselves in the right position. They obviously want to go for the lap at the right time. They want to get good track position. They want to be on the charge and leading them down the main straight now. That looks to me like Tuukka Tarpanen in the 65 who comes across the line to get that ultimate fast lap in. and he really needs to do a fair job right from the charge. So obviously it's always going to be a very solid effort from these competitors, but these first flying laps are going to come thick and fast. So we'll see what the form book is after the first time lap, and then we'll get a much better impression as things continue on. But it's never easy to know who's going to have the best timing of it and who's going to have the best lap times. So the competitors are running around the circuit. Emo Fittipaldi Jr. goes a 1:02.6. I think he's going to go at least a second faster than that once he's actually got himself up to speed. Interestingly, though, they are all still trying to get themselves a fast lap time in under their belt. It's just a banker lap initially. Nico Lanolati is there in second place from Oscar Wirtz and Guillermo Delgado. Jokubas Bogdanovicius. The only two karts I haven't actually seen is Rentaro Sato and Christian Ho. I have a feeling that they might not have been able to attend in the end because obviously... Oh, there's a yellow flag. Now, who's that's parked up at the side of the circuit? Because we've obviously lost someone from the fray there. I wonder if that's Aaron Garcia, because Garcia hasn't come around to start another lap. And it did look as though the kart driver in question was in DPK overalls. So I have a sneaky suspicion that Aaron Garcia may have ended up not being able to get a lap in. Now, Harley Keeble's done a 1:02.138. That's a very good start to his qualifying laps from my point of view. Alex Kubenko's now gone second. Emogeni Fittipaldi is there in third. Maxon Verbruge took a Tarpanen's fifth from Alex Powell. Nicola Nalati's just come up into seventh position from Bruno Del Pino and Matteo De Palo. Koskenurven, 10th position. Oscar Wirtz from Guillermo Delgado. But there's no presence of Rentaro Sato or Christian Ho. I'm not entirely sure they've been able to make it here in the end. They're in the entry list, of course, but you don't really know who's here until they have come up onto the circuit. But Aaron Garcia has definitely gone out on track, but has stopped out on the circuit. So Aaron Garcia of the DPK Racing Squad not able to complete qualifying. That is tragic news for him. It means he'll start the races from the back end of the field over the course of the remainder of this afternoon and all of Saturday. So he's going to have to spend the entire weekend pulling off multiple overtaking moves to move his way forward. There's less than 20 seconds left on the timer, so now we'll get to see the showdown for the final lap of qualifying. Can anybody beat the time set by Martini Estension? Let's go down and find out. Bruno Del Pino has done a 1:01.488. That's close, but no coconut, as the time ticks down to 0. Now the checkered flag is there. We need to see if it is at all possible, because Koskenurfen is getting close to that mark. Harley Keeble's gone purple in the first sector. Tukatarpanen's gone purple in the second. This is going to be close as they come across the line. Tarpanen's gone second. Keeble's gone third. So close, but not close enough. Now, I'm not sure if anyone's going to get closer as well. Lucas Flusha goes fifth fastest. Great lap from him at the end there. And fastest of all in the third sector. Bruno Del Pino has not come through to finish his qualifying run yet either. So let's see how the Spaniard does as he comes through over the line. Alex Powell jumps up to sixth place. Koskenurfen gets a 1:01.455 right at the bitter end. Again, it's not quite fast enough to get up to the front end of the fray. But where's Emo Fittipaldi? He hasn't finished his lap time by the look of it, because Emo Fittipaldi was on a fast lap. He'd gone faster in his second. Now he's come through a 1:01.843. So not quite the lap he wanted in the end there. For whatever reason, his third sector was not quite at the same pace that I assumed he was going to be, certainly from the start of the session, running towards the front. So not quite what we thought we'd see. But Koskenurfen has gone fastest in this time group. Crucially, though, it's not faster than we saw from Martini Estension. The Rosberg Academy driver is the fastest driver across the three groups, and that is great news for the Norwegian. He will be pole position for each of his heats. Well, now the drivers have all come through and finished their qualifying laps. There's no Rintaro Sato, no Christian Ho, unfortunately, so we won't be able to see them out in action, which is unfortunate, ready for this first round of the season. And Aaron Garcia having to break down, unfortunately, during his qualifying lap. But we can show you the times from this third group very shortly indeed, and it will give us an indication as to what the drivers have to do in terms of the rest of their weekend. Nobody able to get close to that 1:01.2 second lap, but it is very, very close indeed, very tight. Koskenurfen the fastest, though, in front of Bruno Del Pino and Tuka Tarpanen. Very close indeed between those three. Less than a tenth of a second covering the top four as Harley Keeble is in there in fourth place. Let's bring up the times. Alex Kubenko fifth from Lucas Flusha. Alex Powell in seventh from Santiago Valve. And Maxon Verbruge from Matteo De Paolo. Nasser Tunion and Emo Fittipaldi in 12th position, just in front of Oscar Wirtz in 13th place and in front of Eric Genet. How about that? Fittipaldi, Wirtz, Genet all together in the top 14. Then Alessandro Gusti and Maxim Rem from Jokubas Bagdonovicius and Guillermo Delgado, Francesco Marengue, Nico Lanolati, and Fernando Soto Gallegos. So that is the 21 drivers that managed to get a lap time in for that particular group. No time from Aaron Garcia, sadly, who broke down on his first flying lap. He broke down in the first sector. So we'll have to watch what the Spaniard for DPK Racing does in the sessions themselves. And obviously, for whatever travel restrictions are in place, means we don't get to see either Rintaro Sato or Christian Ho attend the meeting. That is unfortunate, and we will see them back in their respective berths at Ricky Flynn Motorsport and Sauber Karting very soon indeed. But it is fantastic news for Martinius Stenshorn. The Norwegian has gone to the top of the timesheets across all three groups, so he will start Class A. The groups are now segregated into various time-allotted groups, and in the A category class, the A group, he will be at the top, having set the fastest time of any session. So great. Congratulations to Martinius Stenshorn, the fastest driver in the OK Junior category across the first qualifying session in Champions of the Future history. Very good indeed, and that's a nice moment for the record books there for Martinius Stenshorn. Next up on circuit, it is the OK category, the senior drivers, the kings and queens of the world of karting in direct drive. These are the heroes of the sport and the ones that have a 50-50 chance of breaking up into the world of Grand Prix racing up at the top of the sport, but also the guys where the legends of the sport are made. This is where competitors such as Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton even cut their teeth in this particular category many, many years ago. Okay, to be fair, Hamilton never did okay, but he certainly did the equivalent back in 2000 and 2001. And certainly in recent years, we've had amazing drivers come through this OK category in recent times. And of course, the last 2 years, there's been a world champion from Italy, and that is Lorenzo Travasanuto. He is here this weekend. Let's talk you through all of the drivers within the OK category and where they will be racing in 2020.
Birolart begin their quest with an epic lineup as Clayton Ravenscroft joins forces with Nicolas Bertolatti and Cubby Powells. Maya and Sutumne Pungpang continue their work for the squad and are joined by a new driver from Uzbekistan, Ismokuja Akhmedkodjiav. We'll be keeping a keen eye on Leclerc by Lennox, who also have a great chance of victory with Roman Sharapov, Oliver Gray and Jamie Day. CRG have a great chance of success in 2020 as Jenis Savico joins Rasmus Yutsimis and Spanish ace Ayrton Fonseca. At CV Performance, Maximus Meyer and Matthias Salonen will once again race for the team that became world and European champions last year. Alex Dunn from Ireland and Korea's Hwarang Kim step up to the senior category with DR, as the team will be hoping for a brilliant season. A truly international team at Xspirit this season sees Tony Naud partner up with Charlie Wirtz, Kaius Sixnelis and Alexandro Iancu. At Forza Racing, Delana Van Toff and Rafael Camara return and are now joined by rising talent Luca Leistra as they quest again for victory. There are 9 races for Kart Republic in 2020 as Andrea Chini-Antonelli steps up to senior and joins Josep Marti and Lorenzo Petresi. Pedro Perino joins the team too, beside Poland's Oli Pilka and Hungary's Levi Rebej. There are also 3 new names for 2020, Santiago Trezzini, Enzo Trulli and Miron Pingazov. Taylor Barnard stays at Rosberg Racing Academy, now joined by Lawrence Van Hopen, whilst Harry Thompson joins the Sauber karting team. Giorgio Pantano's new team have 2 incredible talents for OK in 2020, Lorenzo Rosico and Juho Valtonen. Paralin continue their quest for glory with Matthias Magato, James Wharton and Henry Saskelati. Praga Racing continue to bring the style to the paddock with Michael Paparo and Ricardinho Garcia. Junior World Champion Thomas ten Brinker remains with Ricky Flynn as he steps up to seniors and is partnered by Sebastian Gravlund. TB Racing returns in McLaren Papaya Orange as German superstars Hannes Janke, Ben Dorr and Joel Mesch aim to become champion. Tony Kart begin with a pair of world champions, Lorenzo Travasanuto and Pedro Hiltbrand, beside Joe Turney and Diego Conteca. French squad VDK Racing lines up with 4 brilliant Frenchmen, Marlon Hernandez, Frank Shepard, Marcus Amon and Hugo Besson. The last team in the mix is Ward Racing with another large lineup led by Nikita Bedrin, Marcus Kayak and Alexander Partyshev. There will be strong competition from their teammates Norton Andreasen, Lola Lovinfoss and Noah Degenbol. But you'll also need to keep an eye on the talents of Siim Liedmar, William Sieverholm and Cecilia Hedqvist. We'll also see the likes of local stars Alejandro Lahoz, Hugo Belder and Erbalds Moa up against Finnish privateers Emily Kovisto and Atte Selma-Nautio. It could be a strong weekend too for Matthias Torrigiani and Mikael Hjorgaard, but the dark horse for Zuera has to be Energy course star Robert De Haan. If he gets half a chance, he could win the whole thing.
Wow, a fascinating group of drivers then in OK Senior in 2020. And I have to say, so many competitors that actually have a chance of winning the whole thing. This is the difficulty in the OK Senior. You have so many drivers with such a waft of talent. You've got to remember that a lot of the junior drivers that were at the front in 2019 are now in the OK Senior in 2020. So the likes of the European champion Marcus Amond and the champion of the world Thomas ten Brinker are now in the senior category. So this is definitely going to be an interesting dynamic for the OK Seniors in 2020. And of course, they're up there fighting it out with the midst of the world champions of the past, such as Pedro Hiltbrand and the reigning double champion Lorenzo Travazanuto. And there are so many different opportunities to see the rising stars as they come through, the likes of Hannes Janke, European champion in 2018, and Juho Valtonen, the man who almost won the world title on home soil at Alaharma back in 2019. He's now with the Pantano squad for 2020, an all-new team, but run by Giorgio Pantano, the man who knows almost everything there is to know about karting. So it's going to be a fascinating opportunity to see these guys in action. And we're going to see some really interesting new changes of the guard. The men who have been up at the front for the majority of the weekend have been Nikita Bedrin and Jamie Day. So we'll see how the karts are going to go over the course of this weekend here at Zuera. Let's head down to the pit lane and have a look and see how the competitors are going to get on for this first qualifying session of the groups. And it is, of course, the OK Seniors, and they will be separated into 3 groups again, as always. And it's going to be fascinating again because obviously the air temperature is increasing, which means the track temperature is increasing, and the water is starting to get hotter and hotter in each of those engines, and that makes it very difficult for the karts to balance themselves out in terms of overall pace. The hotter the water in that engine gets, the harder it is to get the maximum out of the kart. So they're obviously going to be working very hard to get themselves into a good rhythm and a good pace to make it all work. But these guys obviously are pushing it to the absolute limit, and they need to. You know, there are so many drivers out there who are ready to take a victory off them if they are not prepared and they are not ready to see what comes around the corner. And there are so many overtaking opportunities here at Zuera. It's never going to be easy to hold on to a lead here. Defending is very tricky because there are so many different opportunities for drivers to make an overtaking move. You've got to remember that at this particular circuit, and I've been looking at it as I did my track walk this morning, none of the drivers really tend to get too close to the curbs around here because the corners are quite open, they're quite fast, it's a very technical circuit, and this is one of those positions on the corner where essentially a lot of the drivers tend to go quite close to the curb, but here you come out a little bit more, maybe by about 4 or 5 feet, just that little bit further out, and it means that you're not flirting with that curb, you're not flirting with the white line on the entry of the apex, you're just holding it more to the middle of the circuit. And obviously, with all the rubber being there, your entry speed is perhaps a little bit more than it would be for a similar corner at another racetrack. The drivers love it here at Zuera. It's a real racer's circuit. Lots of overtaking opportunities, particularly as you come out of that final turn, the right-hander that opens on exit. So you can get a fast line through there. If you get it slightly wrong, the guy behind has a chance to pounce, and you can do the sort of the NASCAR-style drafting over to the finish line. There have been some great side-by-side photo finishes here at Zuera over the years in the world of karting, and I have a feeling we may get 1 or 2 of them over the course of the heats today. So well, certainly for tomorrow and Sunday as well, and that's obviously what you'll get to see when we go live for tomorrow's live stream, of course, and that's going to be at 10:15 local time. So just as you're finishing your morning line of a Saturday and finishing off your breakfast, you can tune into us, and we'll give you a full day of motorsport action here from the Circuito Internacional de Zuera, just downtown Zaragoza. And it's a wonderful, wonderful place and a brilliant circuit. The locals have been fantastic to us and made sure that we've adhered to all of the rules and regulations. Temperature checked us all when we came inside. Perfectly fine, no worries there. So good to see how everybody is getting themselves ready for the action and the drama. Now, OK Senior in my opinion, looking at the entry list for this weekend and looking at the teams where everybody is and looking at the form book that we've seen from OK Senior in different categories and different regions and championships over the course of the last few weeks, the man who seems to be in form at the moment is the Russian Nikita Bedrin for the Ward Racing team. He's made the switch from the Tony Kart Factory team for 2020, and he seems to have settled into a nice rhythm and a nice home here. And as he's evolved from the world of junior into senior, Bedrin is the man on form. He's very, very lightweight still. Obviously, he was one of the younger drivers within OK Senior. We saw this a little bit in 2019 with a few of the drivers coming straight out of junior and up to the front in the senior category, such as Gabriele Mini, Dino Beganovic, and a few of the others to name, like Gabriele Bortoletto, for example. They came straight up to the front. Now, I have a feeling Bedrin is going to go the same way. And also, over at Charles Leclerc by Lennox, another fast driver that people have identified to me is Oliver Gray, again with that same lightness and intensity. Now, he's going to bring an awful lot to it. Let's go down to the pit lane and have a look and see the drivers as they come out for their first qualifying practice group. It's going to be a very interesting battle to see how they crack on. And here are the drivers. 7 minutes on the clock once again, of course, for qualifying. The green lights go on. The green flag waves, but nobody comes out onto the circuit straight away. How dare you suggest such a thing? They're all going to wait for their optimum moment. Marlon Hernandez is one of the drivers in the grid here for VDK Racing in the first qualifying practice group. The Irishman Alex Dunn is there in position as well. Maximus Meyer for CV Performance Group. Luigi Coluccio for the Cosmic Racing Department. And then we have the squadron of Ward Racing drivers in this category. It is Marcus Kayak, Norton Andreasen, and Cecilia Hedqvist. They're all going to be very quick. David Sobrero, the Portuguese driver, is there in position. He's just the kart that's gone out on circuit. In fact, the Portuguese has just left the pit lane. Forza Racing has Delano Vanthoff and Luca Leistra in this particular qualifying group. Their third man is out later. And then we have Juha Valtonen, who is in the Pantano lineup, of course, for the Kart Republic chassis, the Finn, who almost won the World Championship back in 2019. Nicolas Pertalati and Maya Verg, the two Birolart teammates, although Maya Verg, of course, is still racing in the Richard Mill colours of the Talent Academy. And we have Lorenzo Petresi, Levi Revege, Santiago Trezzini, and Enzo Trulli, who are all together in the Kart Republic awning. And that's going to be fascinating. Enzo Trulli, of course, moving across to Kart Republic for the 2020 season. Taylor Barnard is still in the mix for the Rosberg Racing Academy colours. And he's definitely going to be one to keep an eye on there in kart number 269. Satumnu Thanapongpang, we hope he's here for the Birolart Racing team. But, of course, like his teammate, the Uzbekistani Ahmed Kojav, might not have been able to make it here after all of the difficulties. Matthias Mogato for the Paralin Racing team is here, and Emily Covisto and Atasama Nautio for Koski Motorsport are both here, as is the Italian star Alexandro Iancu for Expirit Racing. So it's obviously going to be a very, very tight battle for all of them. Out onto the circuit comes the 272, and that, of course, is Satumnu Thanapongpang. For a few drivers, that's the signal they were waiting for to get out on circuit. But there's a fair few who've decided, right, enough is enough, no more waiting around. Let's get out there. Maximus Meyer, I think, was one of the drivers getting himself out onto the circuit. And I thought I spotted Luigi Coluccio just getting his way out on circuit now. The 220, there he is in the Cosmic machine this year. Last year, of course, he was part of the Birolart operation, but has moved over to Cosmic for 2020. Fascinating to see the drivers who have moved across and who have stayed put. But a glorious circuit now here. Just take a look at that skyline. It is absolutely wonderful, and a fantastic backdrop for all of the competitors as they get themselves ready for the action here at Zuera. 4 minutes and 10 seconds of qualifying on the clock. There is the Paralin. That is the 278, I think that is, 276, I should say, of Matthias Mogato, who was out there on circuit being tailed around by one of the Expirit drivers out there? Can't quite make it out from this perspective. But as you can see, again, normal tactics and normal service resumed in the world of karting as they all try and find their optimum line, their optimum position to get out onto the circuit. Next to me is though the only person from this qualifying group that hasn't made it out onto the circuit in the end is the American driver, Santiago Trezzini. So I wouldn't be too surprised if he's rather sadly not been able to make it. I've been so busy running around interviewing drivers over the last 2 days, I haven't had much of an opportunity to grab a look at the timing sheets from practice, but the drivers have been telling me who to watch for and who we should be keeping an eye on in terms of the fastest drivers in the rankings. So with 3 minutes and 13 seconds on the clock, we're obviously going to get the first flying lap in, and then we'll be able to have a chat in our studio here before dropping down to the finish line once again, and we'll see who gets the ultimate time. And of course, no times have yet been set in OK Senior, so this group is leading the way and actually comes in with the advantage of having the coolest circuit conditions possible, because the hotter the circuit gets, the tougher it's going to get the kart up to its optimum speed. And I've been told many a time that the hottest part of the circuit, the hottest time of day for the racetracks, is usually about 4 p.m, 5 p.m, once the heat has had the chance to really cook the circuit up into a frenzy, and the races will obviously be on at that point. But it is a tiny bit cooler tiny bit cooler today than it was yesterday as the first flying laps come through. Max Meyer's gone faster than anybody on a 101.123, and now we're into the 60-second mark. Taylor Barnard has come up with a 60.530. Alexandro Iancu and Matthias Morgato are in the mix there in second and third as well. But Taylor Barnard goes top. Wow, that's a fascinating starting point. Taylor Barnard going fastest initially there, and has been fastest of all in the third sector. Now Norton Andreasen has come up to second place, just 1/10 of a second off the pace of Taylor Barnard. Fastest of all in the first sector though, Juho Valtonen on this lap, so expect the Finn to come charging forward. Taylor Barnard has actually backed right off on this second lap as well, so his first sector was a good 3 seconds off the pace. So I wonder if he only had one fast lap in him. Maya Berg has gone fastest of all in the second sector, so expect the Richard Mill Talent Academy driver to move her way further forward. She's actually got a very busy year ahead of her as well. Not only is she racing, obviously, in the RGMMC paddocks here at the Champions of the Future and the FIA karting, but she's got an FIA Women in Motorsport Commission weekend coming up at Le Mans in October. So that'll be interesting. She's gone second fastest, actually, just in behind Dilano Van Toff, who's gone back up to the front. So Van Toff is now your leader from fellow Dutch racer Maya Berg. Up to second now comes Luigi Coluccio. So Coluccio coming up to second fastest then in the Cosmic. That definitely gives him plenty of scope to be working with. But Norton Andreasen goes fastest of all. Goodness me. Andreasen has gone 1 minute, 0.147. So we've got the final minute of qualifying still to come. Drivers will be trying to get their final flying laps in. But Andreasen, fastest of all now, in front of Dilano Van Toff and Luigi Coluccio. Then Maya Berg, Enzo Trulli, Maximus Meyer, Taylor Barnard, Luca Leistra, Alex Dunn and Matthias Morgato. So a very fast run from the competitors at the moment as they come out of the final turn. It looks like the Forza Motorsport machine, Forza Racing kart of Dilano Van Toff remains second. No improvement. Up to second now comes Maya Berg. On a 1 minute, 0.304, Alex Dunn goes third, the Irishman. What a great performance from Alex Dunn so far. Taylor Barnard in second position as well. So Taylor Barnard comes back up the order. Luigi Coluccio back into third place. They're all trying to reach the time set by Norton Andreasen. How he managed to get that lap together is evident by his first sector. His first sector was a 19.22. An absolutely fabulous lap time there. And again, he gets another 1 minute, 0.174 lap time there. Another lap fast enough to be fastest of all. It's that first sector. He's nailed it more than anybody else. Taylor Barnard's matched it, a 19.26. So only a few hundredths of a second off Andreasen, who has now finished his session. So he's not going to get another lap in. If Barnard can match that sort of pace in this second and third sectors, he's already a little bit off in the second sector. I don't think Barnard's going to match it now. I did have a sensation, a sneaky suspicion he might have had a crack at it. Dilano Van Toff crosses the line, remains in sixth place. There might be a few shuffles. Oh my goodness, Juho Valtonen's popped up right at the end there on a 1 minute, 0.066. Valtonen for the Pantano team pops up right at the last. Absolutely amazing. What a lap time from Juho Valtonen. I tell you what, he's been waiting and biding his time for that one. The only two that still need to come through to complete the laps are Luigi Coluccio and Alex Dunn, but I'm not sure they're going to do it. I think they've already bailed on their qualifying laps, realising that their second sectors on this lap were not going to be good enough to improve. So they have come in, but Juho Valtonen, that came completely out of left field. His first sector was not even his fastest that he had done, a 19.32. So he could have gone a bit quicker, actually, but personal bests in the second and third sectors, that's what got the job done. He wasn't even, unbelievably, his lap time was a 1 minute, 0.066.
but he wasn't even the fastest driver through qualifying in any of the 3 sectors. That is astonishing. Fastest of all in that first sector was Norton Andreasen, which is why he got up to second. Fastest in the second sector was the 2:58 of Maya Berg, and the fastest in the third sector was actually Taylor Barnard. So astonishing that Valtonen was able to put together the perfect lap despite not even being fastest of all in any of the 3 sectors. That just shows you Juha Valtonen's quality. He's the most perfectly rounded driver within this group of competitors. So they've all now come into the pits. Let's look at the times. Valtonen at the front end from Andreasen. Barnard is third from Coluccio, Verg, Patrese and Alex Dunn. Delano Van Toff is there in 8th place from Matthias Mogato and Marcus Kayak. Then Enzo Trulli and Levi Revej. We've got Max Meyer there in 13th place from Luca Leistra. Alexandro Iancu and Atosama Nautio. Marlon Hernandez and Emily Koivisto. Nicholas Bertolatti, Tanapong Pangsatumnu, Cecilia Hedqvist is there in 21st, and David Sobrero only managed to get a couple of laps in there, but manages to get 22nd place. No sign, unfortunately, of the American Santiago Trezzini from this particular qualifying group. He will be back, hopefully, at a future weekend. Rather unfortunate not to have him there. Now, we do need to turn our attentions a little bit to the second qualifying practice group. I have my notes in front of me here. And obviously, we're going to see a really interesting crop of drivers now trying to take on Valtonen. But that lap time is going to be very hard to beat. 1 minute dead, 0.66. And that is, 1 minute dead, 0.066, in fact. So it's a very tall order for the drivers that we've got coming up. But there are a few names in that mix that are likely to get close to it. And, of course, the one that everybody's been talking about this weekend is the Ward Racing driver from Russia, Nikita Bedrin. He's the one who's got a great opportunity to go to the top of qualifying altogether. And everybody keeping an eye as well on the Leclerc by Lennox driver, Oliver Gray. So those are 2 drivers we need to keep an eye on. And they're in this practice group as well. But then so too are the last 2 world champions in karting in 2019, Thomas Tembrinka and Lorenzo Travasanuto. They're both in this mix for Ricky Flynn Motorsport and Tony Kart Racing, respectively. But then you also have, in this time group, amazing crop of drivers. For the Sauber karting team, you've got Harry Thompson. He's one to keep an eye on this weekend as well. We're likely to see a big push from the European champion of last year, Marcus Amond, in juniors, that is, the European champion, because, of course, in senior, Travasanuto won both the European and World Championships in the same season, and not many drivers can say they've done that. James Wharton, the Australian, is going to be in the mix as well for Parolin, and he's definitely been making some magic out there on the circuit since coming up from junior in 2019. Now he's a senior, and is definitely going to be one to watch, as, of course, is Charlie Wirtz. He's another one who has stepped up and is really starting to make some waves out there. The TB Racing team is one that motor racing fans in general will love to see out on the circuit because they're running in the McLaren Customer Racing colours. That papaya orange really does look resplendent on a Kart Republic chassis, I tell you. It looks absolutely beautiful, and you're going to get to see Ben Dorr and Joel Mesh out there on the circuit. Now, Ben Dorr, of course, is the driver who put on that giant killing effort at Genk last year and really showed everybody how to get the job done. And this TB Racing team that used to have that beautiful sort of black and orange tint to it has now gone completely McLaren Customer Racing colours, and I have to say it does look absolutely splendiferous. We've also got Lorenzo Rosico out there. Now he's made the switch across to the Pantano team as well, obviously wanting the guidance of a former Formula 1 and IndyCar driver. Tony Nauder for the Xspirit Racing team. Her teammates will be in the mix there as well, Charlie Wirtz and Kaya Sixnellis. And it's a fascinating group of drivers that they've got here at Xspirit in the senior category, because for a few of them, this is not just their first season in OK Senior. This is also their first time to Zuera. I was having a quick chat with the Swiss driver, Tony Nauder, a little bit earlier on, and she's obviously very excited about the prospect of racing here at Zuera. Seems to like the flow of the circuit. And every session, she's just getting better and better. So it's great to see that the talent is really starting to come through at Xspirit. And she couldn't be learning from better teammates to work with in the likes of Kaya Sixnellis, the reigning FIA Karting Academy trophy winner, the 10th ever. And also Charlie Wirtz, who represented his country in the same competition and is now, of course, part of the OK Senior category with OK Senior. So interesting to see how he will get on. We also have, of course, Ollie Pilker, who's now part of the Kart Republic team. He's actually racing in Sauber karting colours as well, I noticed. So that's a deal I wasn't aware of. Great to see Ollie Pilker being represented so well. And then we have Pedro Perino in the mix, also at Kart Republic, the Portuguese driver. But also in the mix, keep an eye on Andrea Kimi Antonelli. He's been making waves everywhere in OK Senior since he made the switch, which wasn't that long ago. And obviously he was one of the front runners in junior last year, was second in the European Championships. And had he had a stronger run at Argeville, many people say he could have won the whole title. So he's one definitely to keep an eye on and is already lightningly quick. And doing my mad research that I tend to do when I don't have an opportunity to go racing, I'm fairly confident in saying that Andrea Kimi Antonelli might be the only film star amongst the drivers within OK Senior. As I do, I collect my motorsport fiction, and I happened to see him pop up in the credits of an Italian racing movie called Veloce come il vento. I'm not entirely sure anybody is aware of that one, but he's under the radar there, and it's a great one about an Italian sports car racer. You should go and check it out if you get an opportunity to. We also have Alejandro Lahoz and Hugo Belda, the local drivers. They're obviously going to be very strong here because they know the circuit very well. They also know the culture of the motorsport scene out here. And actually, they'll have a great advantage in terms of weather. They'll know what the air temperature will do to the track surface. They'll know what everybody will do in terms of the lay of the land. So it's going to be a very interesting one. So we're going to see some very entertaining and exciting battles for the competitors in that particular group. Now, obviously, they're going to be coming out very shortly. I've just been handed a message that I need to give out to Ola Hjorgard. There's a van by the entrance with your delivery, so go and pick it up. So that is for Ola Hjorgard. At the entrance, there is a van with your delivery. Go and grab it, because I have a feeling it might be something important. So make sure you go and grab it. Right, who else do we need to talk about in this one? Well, VDK have two very strong drivers in this one. Hugo Besson and their late arrival, their late entry for this weekend, which is Florian Rosso. Now, he's going to be one to watch as well, because as an unknown factor, he'll definitely want to make his mark very quickly within the VDK squad as an OK senior. And as a late entrant as well, he's obviously been able to get himself together very quickly for this first weekend of the season in Champions of the Future. Of the 2 weekends that we're doing, our second one, of course, is later in the year in October in Portugal. And that, of course, is the warm-up, if you like, to the World Championships, which have been moved, of course, to the second weekend of November and have been moved to the Portimao circuit in Portugal. We're all really excited about going there. It's going to be really entertaining and exciting to watch the motor racing as it unfolds. And, of course, it's a movement in the championship because we were, of course, scheduled to be racing at Birigui in Brazil, but that's going to happen now in 2021. So we're very excited about the prospect of seeing the OK senior category drivers in the second group head out onto the circuit. But that pole position time that currently stands of 1 minute dead, 0.066, is going to be very hard indeed for our competitors to beat. Juho Valtonen really has set an incredible pace with that, but fair play to the Swede Norton Andreasen of the Ward Racing team. He got very close to that mark with a stonkingly fast first sector. That's how you're able to really build it around this circuit. And it is a circuit that I know on paper, of course, and in reality, it is split into 3 sectors. But they are 3 very different parts of the circuit, and it makes a fantastic whole package of a racetrack to race from, because the first sector is very fast, very flat out. That second turn, the right-hander, much tighter than the first one, which you can take flat out, and you have to get the balance of it absolutely spot on, because you make a mistake on the apex, it then punishes you in the third and fourth corners, and it really does take a bit of a hammering. Then you get that big stop at the end of the straight for the hairpin. A good exit, very crucial here, because that feeds you into the left-hand hairpin that comes up, and that's a long corner. It takes a long time to get around, and you have to be very patient on the throttle, very cautious with the placement of the kart on the apex. It really does really hamper the tyres if you get it slightly awry. And then you've got the exit, that flick of the right-hander. That's where it's a little bit tricky, because it's a slower corner than the one you've just come through. But corner exit speed is critical. You've got a long straight that feeds into the left-hand hairpin, which opens on the exit. And then you've got that trio of right-hand apexes. They flow into each other. And the third one is the tough one. That's where all of the rubber is placed on the circuit because of the heavy braking. But it's not a big braking point. Even though it is a heavy, it's a gentle dab. But it means that you've got a little bit of a stickier surface to play with. You can be a little bit more aggressive in that turn to get the kart through. Then you have that tight corner of the left-hander, the hairpin, which again opens on acceleration. You don't need to hang too close to the curbs. You just keep it slightly out to the middle of the circuit. There's enough grip there with rubber on the road to bite it. And then comes that stunning final corner. And it is a really tricky one to get right. But if you nail it perfect with the right amount of throttle application, the perfect position in through the final turn, it will spit you out and carry you through the opening of the right flick onto the main straight. And if the kart behind gets it better than the kart in front, you're in an absolute mercy dash to a photo finish at the line. It's a wonderful circuit here, really exciting, and a properly good one for racing. I'm so glad we've decided to come here for 2020. I've watched many a race here on video screens from the Spanish Championships and everything in the past. It's a wonderful place to go racing, and I've wanted to come here for many seasons now. So to actually be here and to soak up the atmosphere and the dynamics of the circuit, it's an absolute joy. Well, I've waffled on far too long, so I think it's now time to go down over to the pit lane and have a look at how things are in preparation for this second qualifying practice group in the OK Senior. Juho Valtonen's time going to be very tough to beat as it gets hotter and hotter through the course of the day. Can anybody from this second group get the job done? It's a tough one because there are so many drivers with the ability to do it, but whether or not they're going to have the right track conditions to do it is going to be a factor. And you can see there are several drivers that are still not even in their karts yet because they're waiting until essentially the last possible minute to get into the kart and get themselves ready to go. A lot of them are just biding their time and waiting for their ultimate moment. And it is going to be a very treacherous session, this one. 7 minutes. The green flag flies. There are the drivers that are going to be in the lineup, the likes of Matthias Torrigiani and the reigning junior world champion Thomas ten Brinker. The reigning European champion is in there as well, Marcus Amond, and Lorenzo Rosico is there as well, having made the switch to Cosmic. Tony Nauder, the Swiss driver, Nikita Bedrin, the Russian, and the teammates at Tony Kart, Lorenzo Travazanuto and Diego Conteca amongst this crop of drivers. Also in there, Ben Dorr and Joel Mesh, the German pairing for TB Racing in the McLaren customer colours. The Expirits of Charlie Wirtz and Kaya Sixnellis, teammates, of course, to Tony Nauder. And then we have Andrea Kimi Antonelli, Pedro Perino and Ollie Pilker, who are flying the flag for Kart Republic, although technically Pilker is under the same colours as Harry Thompson, both carrying the Sauber karting team colours this weekend. Oliver Gray for Leclerc by Lennox Racing, I should say. I do apologise, Jordan. Leclerc by Lennox Racing is what I meant to say. Don't worry. Imagine a commentator who can do his job properly. James Wharton and Parolin Racing. Alejandro Lahoz and Hugo Belda. And then Henri Sascalati, Hugo Besson and Florian Rousseau. The two VDK karts will be there at the tail end of the field. 7 minutes of qualifying have already begun. And in my waffle, I have already gone through 1 minute and 15 seconds of it. And in that time, no major shocks or surprises. Nobody's ventured out on circuit. Why do they wait around so long? Well, this is all down to one thing, tyres. You've got to look after the tyres as much as you possibly can. And if you push them too hard too early, they're not going to be at the perfect operating temperature. So teams wait for the optimum moment. And it's only with about 3 or 4 minutes to go, sometimes even 2.5 sometimes, they will come out onto the circuit and get their fast laps in. So you've got to basically read the pace, read the paddock. Sometimes 1 or 2 drivers need the track time to continue working on setup through qualifying, so they get out there a little bit early. But on this particular occasion, nobody has ventured forth in the first 2 minutes. So obviously there's a fascinating dynamic now as we wait to see which of the drivers are going to be the first ones to blend out onto the circuit. So Marcus Amond, the European champion, is there alongside Harry Thompson, who is on the right-hand side of your screen in the Sauber karting machine. But the competitors are ready to head out, and it will be basically a waiting game to see who blinks first. And whoever heads out onto the circuit, if it's a big name, then they'll all go. And that is exactly what happens. You see, one kart decided to move, and then they all thought, right, this is the moment, let's all go together. And I think the kart that started all of that was Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who just leaves your picture now. And once they all start to make a move, it isn't long before the others go. Now that's the Charles Leclerc by Lennox chassis of Oliver Gray. He decides to push his own kart out there. I noticed that there are a fair few drivers that have a sort of a different ideal about this. Some drivers will get their mechanics to push them so they don't have to worry about jumping into the kart and getting on with it. But some drivers prefer to have that added skill of being able to push yourself and get the kart started and jump in. I know that certainly Lorenzo Travazanuto used to do it an awful lot. I don't know if he still does, but it was something that I saw quite a lot in the World Championships over the last 2 seasons. Lorenzo Travazanuto deciding, I'm not going to get in the kart, I'm going to push it myself, jump in, and then on we go again. But it's usually at the preference of certain drivers. They decide what works for them and stick with it. There are even some drivers who are quite superstitious about these things. They happen to do it and get a good result, and then you don't see them doing anything else after that point because they clearly feel, well, that's clearly what made it work. I don't really think there's any major, massive correlation between these things, but what works for a driver works for a driver. You can't really argue with it. So the competitors are now working their way around the circuit. Only one of them, by the look of it, has not ventured out onto the circuit and has therefore not been able to take up their position in the field, and that is Diego Conteca. Of course, there are travel restrictions in place for certain countries and regions, so we do have to take that into consideration. The drivers are still out there hammering around the circuit pretty quickly. Fastest of all in first and second sectors are Harry Thompson, although now it is, well, it was for a brief moment Florian Rousseau, but now it is Thomas ten Brinker who is the fastest of all in the second sector. So Harry Thompson out there in the Sauber karting team machine is going to come down the main straight and bag the fastest time by virtue of being the first one across the line. Olli Pilka, his teammate, slightly behind. Marcus Simon goes fastest, as does Thomas ten Brinker now. So Joel Mesh in the McLaren colours is third. He's just popped up in front of Thompson. Then Perino in front of Florian Rousseau. Travis Zanuto goes second. So very close in, but still some fast laps to come in. But it's ten Brinker from Travis Zanuto and Marcus Amond for the time being. Well, no major surprises. Three of the biggest names, and they're at the front end of the field. But they're in the 1 minute 0.7 mark at this precise moment in time. They're still a good 0.7 of a second away from what we saw from Juha Valtonen in the first qualifying group. So there's still plenty of time to find. Ten Brinker on a 1 minute 0.747. 0.048 back is Trevor Zanuto, and 0.063 back is Marcus Amon. So very close indeed. Joel Mesh is right up there, though, in the TB racing car, the McLaren colours, and he's there in fourth position. Thompson, Perino, Florian Rousseau and Olli Pilka all still very close. Ben Dorr in ninth and Hugo Besson in 10th position. So there's a lot of big moves that have come through. A lot of times haven't actually come through either. There's a lot of times missing. So the third sector is where we seem to have lost a fair few lap times. Rosico, Nauda, Nikita Bedrin, Sixnellis, Antonelli, Gray, Wharton, Sascalati. Something not quite right. Unless, of course, there's been a horrific accident I've not seen. But I certainly don't think there has been. We're certainly getting several times that have come through and several times that haven't. I think drivers have come into the pits and made some adjustments rather than finish their lap. So it is fascinating. Thomas ten Brinker has done the same thing. He's pitted in, and we've only got the likes of Lorenzo Travazanuto and Charlie Wirtz still out there. So this is going to be fascinating to see who's continued on and who's come through. Well, my timing screen seems to say something different. Let's go through down to the circuit for the last 30 seconds and see what happens. We've got karts still out there, but something has gone wrong in live timing. I unfortunately don't have anything accurate to show you at the moment because something has happened with the timing screen. It seems to show us that every single person is in the pit lane, and you can quite clearly see that isn't the case. So certainly for the moment at least, Thomas ten Brinker is still at the top, but I don't know how accurate that is, whether he's still there or not, and certainly what sort of lap times we're on, because the checkered flag is out. But the timing screen is not quite showing us what it needs to show at the moment. When it updates, we'll give you a better handle on things, but the biggest issue, the biggest key factor at the moment is, of course, how the drivers are doing in relation to the fastest sectors. According to the timing screen, there's the checkered flag to your right-hand side, held by the marshal aloft the gantry. The fastest first sector has been set by the 271. That is Harry Thompson. Fastest second sector, according to my timing screen, is that of Oliver Gray. And the fastest third sector at the moment is the 211 of Thomas ten Brinker. Now, the times are not updating, so we'll have to come back to that a little bit later, I think. Rather unfortunate, because I really wanted to see where we were at in terms of the qualifying second group. So the timing screen has had a little bit of a hiccup somewhere along the line. Hopefully it will update later, but what I can tell you is that 12 drivers completed their first qualifying lap, and we haven't been able to get the other times through. Well, initially, I suppose that does tell us that, you know, the drivers that we expected to be near the front are near the front. And if we go by the times that we saw in the early part of the session, we obviously saw initial fast laps from the likes of Oliver Gray and Andrea Kimi Antonelli. They were on fast laps at the time, as was James Wharton. Kaya Sixnelis and Nikita Bedrin were also looking fairly fast. So unusual. I don't really know how it's going to fare out in this second qualifying group. I'll have to do some research during the third session and kind of see where we're at in terms of times. But again, very, very close in the early part of that qualifying group, but it doesn't really give us any indication with that slight issue with the timing screen as to where we're at. So we will hopefully give you a refresh as soon as is humanly possible. I'll stay on it and keep an eye on it, and hopefully we'll be able to see the times as they are laid out. No update on that at the present moment in time, so we'll keep on with it. But the OK qualifying group practice group 3 is coming up very shortly, and that has another fascinating group of drivers to come through. Hello, though, to all those of you who are watching, wherever you are watching from around the world. This is our qualifying practice, and of course, it gives us plenty of entertainment and previews essentially who's going to be doing what over the course of the weekend. We're not quite going to be able to be with you for the first qualifying heats, which are a little bit later in the afternoon. You can still follow those, though, via our website, championskarting.com. There is a link there for both live timing and our live stream, as well as all of the timings, results, and entries for the weekend, as well as results and regulations, of course, as well there. So you can keep an eye on getting everything together. And if you're a driver or you're a team and you're sitting there thinking, this is all really exciting stuff, I want to get in there and get involved in the championship, well, there is entry list opportunities and obviously processes and costs for how you can get onto the grid for the second round of the championship as well, which takes place later this year in October. And we're really excited about the second round as much as we are for this first one. And it's great to be racing here once again here at Zuera, the first time that the RGMMC paddock has come here since the Spanish Championships last year, and certainly a great opportunity for us to reboot the OK RGMMC paddock, the direct drive world. It's been great to see all of the competitors and the teams and drivers getting into the new flow, the new normal is what it's been dubbed around the paddock, and it's still fairly exciting. Obviously, everybody is still here in terms of the regular faces and the personalities we expected to have in and around the paddock. So it's great to see all of the drivers and teams getting on with their job in the responsible and professional manner that we've come to expect from them all. But the racing is likely to be spectacular when we go live on our live stream tomorrow, and you can catch us in Europe if you're watching at 10:15 local time. So if you're watching back home in the United Kingdom or from wherever you're watching, just subtract or add the hours necessary for the time difference in Spain, and you won't miss it. All you have to do essentially to make sure that you don't sleep in too long tomorrow, or you get up in time, depending again on where you are in the world. Just if you're watching the live stream now via Telemundi Media on YouTube, all you have to do is like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then hit the notification bell. You'll notice that that is just the symbol of a bell. And every time we are due to go live, you'll get a message through to your social network, your email account, and you'll get an alert to say, this race is about to start. This live stream is going ahead. So you won't miss a moment of the action out on the circuit. Now, we've gone straight in to the process of qualifying practice group 3. So I'm going to need to do some homework while this session is alive and kicking. So that's going to be very interesting. We obviously need to keep an eye on the official results of that timed session as the weekend progresses, because it's obviously going to affect where the competitors are going to be starting over the course of proceedings. So I need to keep an eye on that while you guys continue on from your end. It's obviously going to be fascinating to see how the competitors get on with things. We will have some fascinating racing here over the course of the weekend. But obviously, in each of the 4 categories, there's going to be different dynamics. We obviously saw the Mini 60 drivers out earlier on, and you'll see who the runners and riders are for each competitor in that class very shortly, as well as for the KZ2, the gearbox category. Not the biggest grid that we've ever seen for that particular category, but certainly plenty of fair and fast drivers in amongst that. And we still feel, looking at the practice sessions from the KZ2s earlier on, as the drivers were telling me, there's a good 4 or 5 drivers towards the front end that are only covered by about a tenth of a second or two. So that says to me, great racing is ahead. Excellent. And that is exactly what we wanted to see. So hopefully there's going to be plenty of that to come. So far, I still don't really have the competitors from the previous session. And as I'm looking at the time screen in front of me, there's been no major updates from that session. So we will continue with that when it becomes appropriate to. Obviously, that session is still being worked on and still being finalized. So when it comes, it will come. So that is all going to be very, very exciting. And we're going to see another group of drivers coming out now for session 3. It'll be Sebastian Gravland, who is in the second of the Ricky Flynn Motorsport karts. He, of course, is teammate to Thomas ten Brinker. And then we'll have Lola Lovenfoss, who is one of the new recruits in at Ward Racing for the 2020 season. She's obviously been honing her skills the last couple of seasons in the French Championship. She became the vice champion of France in juniors and has now stepped up to seniors in the OK category with Ward Racing. Her ambition is to win the W Series. Fantastic to see how the world of karting has become so much more gender equal thanks to the inception of W Series as a concept. And a few more drivers have definitely had the opportunity to make more of a motorsport network out of it. Full play to them. A lot of our drivers here this weekend see that as a viable option for the future. Jenis Savico for the CRG team, one of the Spanish locals, obviously with a great opportunity to use his knowledge of the circuit to good measure. We have Noah Degenbol Muller, and he is here in number 229. Fascinating to see how he will get on, the young Danish driver. Siim Liedmar is now part of the Ward Racing operation and outfit, and we'll see how he gets on, the young Estonian. Joe Turney is in this mix of drivers. Now, he's another tough factor to call in this one because he's going to be out there working with his teammate in this particular mix, obviously. And this is one of those situations where we were expecting to see Pedro Hiltbrand, the former world champion. He is not in attendance after all this weekend, and that is going to make things very, very interesting for the competitors as they come out onto the circuit for this third group, because Joe Turney is not going to have a teammate to work with in conjunction. That's going to make things interesting for him. He's going to have to work a little bit harder to get the maximum out of the kart. Rasmus Yutsimis is in the mix as well. So is the team leader at the TB Racing squad in the McLaren Papaya Orange, and that is Hannes Janker, the 2018 FIA European champion. So we'll see how he gets on. Rafa Kamara, still part of the Forza Racing outfit, and good to see that the Brazilian has been going very well over the last few races. Michael Paparo and Riccardo Gracia, the two Italian drivers, or certainly Italian licensed drivers, and they are here for Praga Racing, giving us that beautifully exquisite style that the Praga chassis has in comparison to some of its rivals. It really does look beautiful. Mikael Hjogard, the Danish driver, he is there in position as well, and he'll be ready for qualifying, no doubt. The British charge, Clayton Ravenscroft, is going to be in the mix for the Birolart team, and it's going to be an interesting and exciting season for him, as of course this is his first season in the FIA world of karting, and straight in as a senior. He's been one of the stars of the European circuit in X30 in the past, but now this is going to be a very different level of competition for him. But he has been, over the last few weeks, training and racing in various different disciplines and getting himself up to speed in a very efficient manner. Josep Marti, caught up with him a little earlier this morning, the DPK Racing driver in the famous Alonso Racing colours. He is hoping to have a very strong weekend here on home soil. They're head scratching a little bit as to where to find the pace, but I'm sure it'll come in time. Ayrton Fonteca is another one of the Spanish drivers to keep an eye on this weekend. Laurens van Hopen, now the Dutchman has moved across into the Kart Republic fold from his previous team last year, and now he is racing in the colours of the Rosberg Racing Academy. So another driver that we need to keep an eye on. Very fast, very committed, and definitely has a strong chance to move forward in his career. From Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, we have Jamie Day, who is racing for Charles Leclerc by Lennox in their first season partnership. This is the chassis, of course, that is brand new for the 2020 season, the Charles Leclerc chassis under the Birolart banner, but they were hoping for a very competitive start to their season. Their first ever racing competition was out in Dubai for the O-Plate, and the whole event in the junior category was actually won by the Charles Leclerc chassis in the hands of the Moroccan, who's been in this paddock many times before, Suleiman Zanfari. So already they started their season in a very strong light. Juan Carlos Hernandez, the Spanish driver, he's obviously going to be one to keep an eye on as well. Very fast and very rapid in OK category racing. Warang Kim, now he is the Korean driver who represented his country in the FAA Karting Academy Trophy last season. He's now come into the DR squad, and with the Modena engines, of course, they're going to be a very strong operation as the season progresses, and they'll get faster and faster as the year flows on. And then we have two more of the Spanish drivers who know the circuit very well. Miron Pingazov is going to be one to watch out for, as of course is Ubelt Moore, who is in the Tony Kart chassis. So one to watch for definite. And the last man in this group is kind of a dark horse. I think everybody's keeping an eye on this one. and he's definitely a threat for the victory from all corners, and that is Energy Course's Dutch star, Robert de Haan, who has been one of the serial race winners of the last 18 months in any competition he turns his hand to. Now as a senior, of course, his first campaign in 2020, straight in at Energy Course at the front end of most of the fields he's been battling with. He is definitely a serious threat for this weekend's top step of the podium, and everybody's going to be keeping an eye on him. So many drivers out there getting themselves ready. It won't be long before we drop down to the pit lane to keep ourselves abreast of everything that is happening in the 7 minutes qualifying session. I'm also going to try and see if there are any updates to the previous qualifying group, because obviously we wanted to see what happened in practice 2. Still nothing in terms of the way that session has unfolded. I'll try and get some results for you over the course of the rest of the broadcast. If we can get them to you before we go off air, that would obviously be ideal for you. So we'll try and make sure we do that. But after this session is completed in qualifying practice group 3 for the OK senior category, we also have the KZ2 session to come up, the gearboxes. There aren't many of them, unfortunately, but they're still going to give us plenty of exciting motorsport. And I have a feeling that the duel at the front between those 4 or 5 drivers separated by a tenth of a second or so are going to be very interesting. And certainly for the purist who loves their karting, it's going to be very, very close. So now we'll head down to the pit lane and have a look at how things are in the OK Senior practice group. It's going to be very exciting. So the competitors are now there in position and ready for exciting action. In fact, at the front end of that row of karts is the Rosberg Racing Academy colours. So that is going to be Laurens van Hopen, I think, the Dutchman, who will head out onto the circuit first. Notice how the green flag has flown, but there are still a few drivers who are not in their karts even, never mind ready to go out onto the circuit, because they're waiting until the last possible moment. There are the participants in Group 3, or at least there were the participants for Group 3, but I have already talked through them all in extensive length anyway. So you'll still get to see all of them in presence. You can just see off to the right-hand side there the DBK Racing colours of Josep Marti. He'll be getting himself ready on home soil here at Zuera. And just in alongside him is Matthias Salonen, the Finnish driver, one definitely to watch out for. The Forza Racing drivers in the mix there as well. The 247, that is Rafa Camara, the Brazilian, a very fast competitor in this category. It was very quick in juniors and has stepped up to seniors very quickly indeed. Robert de Haan is in there as well, the 290 for Energy Corsa, as is the 230 of Sim Liedmar, the Ward Racing machine. And interesting again to see that there's this trio of different nose sections, the front fairings, I should say, the sections that have been developed and adjusted to over the course of the last few seasons. And you can see all 3 examples of them down there in the pit lane. In fact, in a line, you've got the Energy Course of Robert de Haan with its very traditional front fairing, the nice flat serrated edge. Then you have the hot dog bun, as it's come to be known, the 247 of Rafa Camara, with the groove up the centre to channel airflow and make the kart a little bit more aerodynamic. And then alongside Matthias Salonen's car with that more curvature of the front fairing. So there are 3 different schools of thought nowadays as to what to do. And each of the different teams and drivers have different ideas about what works for them. And sometimes they'll change them during the course of a weekend as well, depending on what the wind is doing, depending on what the kart is doing in terms of its aerodynamic balance. And it is a fascinating development within the sport. It's getting closer and closer to the relevance of scientific aerodynamic development now, the world of karting, as teams are finding more and more virtues of exploration. Now, there goes Salonen out onto the circuit, and that's enough to signal everybody out on track here at Zuera. So they decide this is the moment. They all head out on the circuit, and now we find that one of the karts was hidden by everybody else to go out. That's Jamie Day in the Charles Leclerc by Lennox. Robert de Haan is going to be the last one out by the look of it. Oh no, there are 2 or 3 karts in behind, both from the Ward Racing camp, I do believe. Certainly one of them is. I think the very last one out might be Juan Carlos Hernandez, actually looking at it. But the drivers are out on circuit with 4 minutes left of senior OK qualifying in this first weekend. Just trying to see if I can get any results from the previous session still. That is definitely going to be my target, if we can make it happen. But that second group, obviously the qualifying times were not particularly obvious. We only got half of them for the first time lap, and then the session obviously came to a close before we got to see the time. So as it stands at the moment, Juho Valtonen is on pole position in the Senior OK category until obviously we get a little bit more information on the second practice. I'm going to have a look now at the second practice too. Now I've got an update. Here we go. So from the second qualifying group, it was Nikita Bedrin who went fastest with a 1 minute dead .112. So again, not quite fast as Juho Valtonen, but certainly quickest in that session. Then Oliver Gray. So what people were telling us about Bedrin and Gray, keep an eye on them. Well, they were first and second in their time group. And then we have Andrea Kimi Antonelli, just a whisker quicker than Lorenzo Traversanuto, James Wharton, Thomas Tenbrinker, and Harry Thompson. Then it was Marcus Amond from Joel Mesh, Alejandro Lahoz, and then Hugo Besson from Charlie Wirtz, Henry Sescalati, Kaya Sixnelis really struggling, Lorenzo Rosico, Florian Rousseau, Pedro Perino, Ollie Pilker, Ben Dorr, Tony Nauder, Hugo Belder, and then we had no times from Matthias Torrigiani, or no run at all from Diego Conteca. So that's how it worked out in the second timed practice group, and that means, of course, that Juho Valtonen is still the overall fastest for pole position. Now, Matthias Salonen's just set the first flying lap. It's a 101.596, immediately beaten by Ricardinho Gracia. But here comes the group as they come through over the line for the first time, and this is going to go straight into the 1 minute deads as Lola Lovenfoss goes to the top briefly. Then Clayton Ravenscroft comes up, tops, and Jamie Day gets a 1 minute .784. Robert De Haan gets a 1 minute .789, just 5 thousandths of a second slower, and Mikael Hjorgaard is there in third. So essentially that's Jamie Day at the top for the moment, then Robert De Haan in second from Mikael Hjorgaard and Hannes Janker, and then Noah Degenbol-Moller from Clayton Ravenscroft, Jenis Savico, Rasmus Yosemis, Lola Lovenfoss and Rafa Kamara. Half a second covering all 10 karts in that list, but let's not forget that first flying lap is not going to be their fastest. They're 7/10 of a second away from Valtonen's time, 6/10 of a second away from Nikita Bedrin's. So they're going to be faster still on this first time lap. Robert De Haan, fastest of all in the first sector. Jamie Day now fastest of all in the second sector. So we'll head down to the second in a moment. Joe Turney goes fastest on a 1 minute .628. Then Lawrence van Hoopen and Sebastian Gravlund just in front of Pingasov and Gracia. But wait for the pack. This is where it's going to change. Kamara goes fastest from Juan Carlos Hernandez and Lola Lovenfoss. Paparo now goes fastest. And Jamie Day gets a 1 minute .211. A whisker in front of Janker and De Haan. Noah Degenbol now goes fastest of all. A 1 minute .201. So Degenbol-Muller is the man up at the top end of the field. And that is going to be fascinating to see if he can hang on to that, because this is a very tight run now at the front end of the field. 100th of a second quicker than Jamie Day, and they're all going to be on their final qualifying laps. We need to get down there to the circuit and have a look and see how things are going to be in this tight final lap or so. Can they make that crucial quarter of a second bid to catch up to Juho Valtonen? It's going to be tight around this Zuera circuit. 30 seconds to go. And Degenbol's still there at the front. Lovenfoss improving in both her sectors. De Haan fastest of all in the second sector. Let's head down there and find out how it's going. So Degenbol's still your leader. Across the line comes Gracia and Turney. They don't improve that much on their pace. Kamara now fourth. Lovenfoss is up to seventh. Good run from the Ward driver. Day still second. De Haan comes up to third. And Degenbol goes quicker still, a 1 minute .200 now for Noah Degenbol-Moller. Fascinating situation as Noah Degenbol-Moller is your leader from Jamie Day and Robert De Haan, but they've got a little bit of time still to make up in their final sectors. De Haan goes fastest of all in the first sector. Robert De Haan really wants this pole position if he can get it. Will he be able to match Juho Valtonen in the second and third sectors? That's the key. He needs to get into the 1 minute .0s to stand any chance at all of it. And it's not going to be easy from here on in. The second sector comes through. Salonen crosses the line. Fastest in the second sector for Robert De Haan. Joe Turney goes top six. But they're all going to come through in this final section of the lap. Checkered flag is out. What can Rafa Kamara do? In the top five still? Yes, he remains in fifth position. Now we're going to get some changes though, as up to six comes Josep Marti. The final four are in the mix. Day does not improve. De Haan does not improve. He messes up in the final sector. And Degenbol-Muller holds the fastest time. Janker bails out of his lap, as does Ravenscroft. Fascinating. Noah Degenbol-Muller, the fastest then in that third section. And unfortunately, it means he can't quite compete with the time of Juho Valtonen. So the Pantano team in the first weekend of Champions of the Future gets their first pole position. A brand new team as well. And that's great news for Giorgio Pantano and all the crew, as now we have a new face at the front, Juho Valtonen. Fantastic performance from him. He obviously wants to make sure that 2020 is his year, having come so close last season. He now wants to get the job done, and he and the Pantano crew have done an absolutely amazing job of this qualifying session. Jamie Day, second behind Noah Degenbolmola in the qualifying session run. And then it is Robert De Haan in third from Hannes Janka and Rafa Kamara. Great to see Janka back on pace again. Last year was a very difficult one for the European champion from 2018. But it's good to see that that pace is coming back to the German and the TB squad as well. Just in front of Kamara. Marty is sixth place from Joe Turney. Michael Paparo. Lola Lovinfoss doing a great job there for Ward Racing in the top 10. She looked a little tentative a couple of seasons ago when I saw her last. She's really made some steps forward, which is great news. And then Ricardinho Gracia just in front of Clayton Ravenscroft and Jenis Savico. So some great performances there. In the mix of the field, and what challenges we're going to see in these first few heats for OK Senior. There's the confirmation of the times. Noah Degenbol from Jamie Day and Robert De Haan, from Janka Kamara and Marti Sobrapera, Turney, Papado, Lovinfoss and Gracia, then Clayton Ravenscroft and Jenis Savico. Then we have Rasmus Jutsemis is there in 13th position, just a whisker in front of Juan Carlos Hernandez, Matthias Salonen and Miron Pingazov, Sebastian Gravlund and Lawrence Van Hoopen, and then Mikael Hjogard from Fonteca, Liedmar, Herbertsmoor and Warang Kim. Fascinating battles then to come from OK Senior over the course of the next 48 hours. Goodness knows who we're going to crown as a champion of the weekend, who's going to win the Zuera round of the circuit here in Champions of the Future 2020. Fascinating dynamics so far. And of course, we have the KZ2s about to come out onto the circuit for their qualifying run. They'll be out on the circuit again for 7 minutes. We might see them for a tiny bit longer on circuit than perhaps we would have done for the OKs. But again, don't count on it. They just want to get in, get their 1 or 2 qualifying laps in, and boom, that'll do. You don't need any more than that, apparently. Well, let's talk a little bit about the minis now, because obviously we spoke about them a little bit earlier on, and I did say at the top of the program that we were going to take a look at the drivers and where they were racing for in their teams. We'll do that in just a moment, but first of all, we'll just run through again the qualifying practice they did earlier, just in case you missed it. Dmitry Matveev, the Russian for Energy Course, was actually the fastest driver in that session with a 1 minute 9.471, just a whisker in front of the Japanese driver Kian Nakamura Berta, and then Adam Hideg, the Hungarian for the Kidix SRL team, who is teammate to Luna Flusha, in third position, the Hungarian, just in front of Christian Kostoya of CRG and Luna Flusha in fifth place. Maciej Gladij, the Paralin driver from Poland, is there in sixth position on that starting grid for the first heats. And then we have Mark Kastelic for Team Driver Racing and Denis Kurivali for Kart Republic Spain. He's there in eighth position. And then Len Nij and Filipos Sala of the Team Driver Racing Kart team. They're both there together in the top 10. And then we have Kieran Tees of the Pantano team. He'll be glowing from ear to ear that they've just got an OK Senior pole position with Juho Valtonen. And in 12th place, Thomas Kinsey, the Frenchman from Louis Leveau and Hugo Marti, 2 drivers that are sure to be towards the front end of the field. Then we have Mikel Ider, the Italian from Daniel Dalakian, the Spanish privateer. And then the CRG new boy, Francesek Lasota from Michel Tayati. Sadly, no sign yet of Haito Delagnol and Kimi Tani. Hopefully, we'll see them in the races. If not, we wish them all the best. Hope you keep safe and sound, and we'll see you again for the later race weekends of the day. However, I did say that we would tell you who the runners and riders are in the mini category and who they're going to be racing for. And I'll do that by showing you our next spotters guide, but also you get to see who the contenders are in KZ2.
Strong grid of drivers to keep an eye on in the Mini 60 category, with local favourites Denis Kurivali and Luna Flusha sure to be fighting at the front, as well as Dmitry Matveev battling for Energy Course, and CRG fielding the rising talent and Francesek Lasota. Ties Kieran will drive for the new Pantano team, with Haito Dalagnol competing for Praga and CV Performance running German star Luke Korda. Team Driver Racing Kart will hope that Mark Kastelic and Kian Nakamura can challenge for victory, whilst home stars Michel Tayati, Daniel Dalakian and Hugo Marti will hope that local knowledge can serve them well. Maciej Gladij will be flying the flag for Poland and Paralin, but keep an eye on the privateers, as Kimi Tani and Lent Nij could also make a bid for the top of the podium. In KZ2, the DR squad are quietly confident, with Daniele Vizil, Rodrigo Almeida and Maximilian Paul racing for glory. But Brad Benavides returns to karting with CPB Sport, having won last year's Miami Winter Cup in X30 Shifter. CRG Spa will be working hard with Brandon Nilsson and Paolo Ippolito, and local drivers Alvaro Garcia and Antonio Garay believe they will be the best chances for a home winner.
So obviously, I was just going to tell you about the DR driver, Maximilian Paul, and unfortunately, I have control over the mute button in my box. Just one of those things. We're still working out the finer details. You know, it's all fine. But Maximilian Paul was the only driver in that KZ2 entry list that was unable to attend here this weekend. So the German driver obviously had some kind of sports car commit, I am assuming, because he obviously does karting as well as sports cars. So we wish Maximilian Paul all the best. We want to welcome him back into the paddock as soon as is humanly possible. But obviously you saw there the mini drivers and how they're preparing, and we talked through the results from their early qualifying session. But in KZ2, there may not be many big names within that particular list of drivers. There's certainly nowhere near as many contenders in KZ2 this time out as there was in previous weekends that we've had of gearbox racing. But you've got to remember that a lot of the KZ2 drivers are still preparing for their own campaigns. They run on a slightly different calendar to the world of direct drive, and a lot of them are still trying to dial in settings and performances ready for their own FIA campaigns later on in the year when their season starts at the beginning of August. Now that's going to be very interesting when we pick that all up. But the KZ2 drivers are down in the pit lane. They're getting themselves ready to head out onto the circuit, and there's a good 4 or 5 drivers in the mix here of KZ2 that will be preparing. Now, for those who have never seen karting before, or certainly not at this level before, who are wanting to know what is the difference between OK and KZ2, well, it's a very, very simple difference between the two. OK is direct drive, and KZ2 is gearbox karting. Now, gearbox karting is just about the most physical discipline of the sport. It's incredibly intense, very, very difficult, and it's a whole new adverse. If you think about when you go karting with your friends, whether it's at a professional circuit or whether it's at a slightly more casual indoor corporate facility, most of the karts are you put your foot down on the pedal and on you go, and then you just tap the brake to slow down a bit. That's known as direct drive, and obviously the OK karts here, that is the absolute pinnacle of the karting machine. KZ2 is a completely different animal because these things you have to change gear while you are racing around the circuit as well. You have a lever to the side of your steering wheel, and you have to obviously move it around to change gears. Now that adds an incredible amount of physicality to a sport that is already incredibly intense and physical. And it's a clear distinction of the world-class drivers out there. The ones who can master it really have incredible dexterity and incredible versatility within motorsport. And it's no surprise to learn that the world champion and vice champion in the world of gearbox karting back in 2013 were 2 guys called Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Now that just shows you the sort of incredible skills that you need to be a racing driver at the top level. But so many incredible kart racers have come through the world of gearbox, and I have absolutely attested to the fact and completely stand by the opinion that any racing driver worth their salt in karting, once you've finished direct drive, before you make the switch to anything else, you've got to do a season in gearbox. I'm not joking. It really does improve you as a driver unbelievably. You become a very good driver and then turn into a great legendary driver. If you can perfect gearbox karting, you can manage anything else that you turn your hand to. It is so physically demanding. The concentration levels are off the chart. And if you can win in gearbox, you are one of the world's best racing drivers. Never mind karting drivers. It is such a technical skill. They've even given gearbox karts to the likes of David Coulthard. Valentino Rossi had a go years ago at Laguna Seca, got out of the kart and said, "You guys are mental." And that's how physical it is. You've really got to be at the peak of your ability as a racing driver. It is so difficult to get right. KZ2, the slightly lower class of gearbox karting compared to when you see them out in action in the middle of August, when the gearbox season really begins for the FIA, you'll see the KZ drivers, and they really are absolutely explosive in terms of their ability. Just over a year ago, almost to the day, we had the end of the European Championships at Sarno, and we had that fantastic battle in the FIA karting championships, where we had two championship rivals colliding in 2 consecutive laps of a European final. It is just the most incredible sport, and it's where all of the great legends of the karting world, such as Marco Ardigo, Paolo De Conto, these legends that are now finally deciding to hang up their helmets, Davide Fore, all of these amazing superstars of the sport have come from and have built their brand. And we're going to see them in action, of course, later in the year. But the KZ2 drivers are here. They're obviously wanting to race for pride and for the prestige of racing, as well as for some of them learning a new discipline and learning a new skill. Not all of them have got into KZ2 very quickly. There's 1 or 2 drivers out there, none the least of whom is the Mozambican star Rodrigo Almeida, who is another competitor who represented his country in the FIA Karting Academy Trophy a couple of seasons back, who is just in his first season of gearbox racing. But everybody's told him, this is what you need to do to really be an elite motorsport competitor. And he's believed them. He's gone with DR SRL, a fantastic team to learn the discipline of gearbox. And he's got a great teammate this weekend to learn from in the Romanian Daniel Vazil. So this is definitely a good choice for him. But there are a few drivers on the grid this weekend to watch out for. In particular, I would keep one eye firmly placed at the CPB Sport driver, Brad Benavides. To this day, he is still, technically speaking, the undefeated IAME X30 Super Shifter driver in the IAME Euro Series paddock, because we have not done a Winter Cup Series race since then, about 18 months ago in Valencia. So it's an absolutely incredible performance from a youngster, and we're going to see some great drivers out there in the KZ2 qualifying session. We'll head down to the circuit and we'll see how the competitors are getting on for the next 7 minutes around the circuit. There's not going to be too many of them out there, but they're going to be the fastest karts that you're going to see this weekend. Hang on to your hats, folks. This is going to be a bit of a blast. The drivers are about to go out onto the circuit. Their other competitors will head out on circuit for qualifying. And straight away out onto the circuit comes the 417. That is Alvaro Garcia. So Garcia comes out onto the circuit straight away. He's not going to wait around. I don't think he was the only one to head out onto the circuit in that mode as well. We've also got the Romanian star, George Tradescu. So George Tradescu is going to be in the mix there as well. Brice de Gaye, the Frenchman, will be in the mixture, as well as Riccardo Avila. And then the 2 Italians, I should say Italian licensed, because they're both from CRG, Paolo Ippolito and the Swedish star, Brandon Nielsen. And Antonio Garay, the Spanish driver, is in the mix there as well. There he is, coming out of the pits, in fact, on the all-black Magic Racing chassis. So he will make his way out on circuit, and just left behind are the 2 CRGs of Ippolito and Nielsen. Now these two are likely to be challenging for the victory. They will fight tooth and nail for glory. There is the Swede, Brandon Nielsen, just making his way out onto the circuit. We caught up with him a little earlier, so hopefully in tomorrow's broadcast, or certainly via our social media channels, you'll be able to hear his thoughts on Zuera and competing in this fantastic class. Now we'll get a look up these karts a little bit closer in, but they are so much more physically demanding than the other karts in the mix. Now just watch the drivers as they come around on this circuit. Now the difference between these karts and the other ones, you can just about make out the lever to the right hand side of the driver's steering wheel, and that's how they change gear. They pull down to go up through the gears, and they push away to decelerate and obviously drop down through the gears. So it is very physically demanding. It's another element to add on to what is already an incredibly physically demanding discipline. So it's a very tough run for the competitors out there. Now I'm told that looking down the grid, the only driver that is not heading out on circuit, and therefore potentially may not have been able to commit to the race due to travel restrictions, is George I will get this name right, George Tradescu, the Romanian, but he hasn't quite been able to get to the circuit in time by the look of things. Unfortunate though it is, that is the situation we are presented with. So we wish George Tradescu and his team and family all the best, and hopefully they'll be back in time for the second round in October. So there is the 414, that's Brad Benavides, the Spanish driver. A lot of people pick him as their favourite for this weekend. And of course, he's dabbling in and out of the world of single-seater racing cars as well. He's been on the Indy racing ladder, trying to make his way up to Indy cars in the future. But he always comes back to karting whenever he gets an opportunity. And he is still the undisputed and undefeated king of IAMA Euro X30 Super Shifters, having won the last title that it ran for the shifter category, which of course is back in 2019 at Valencia in the Winter Cup. So the battle continues, and the first laps are in. Brice de Guy has gone round in 103.511. The laps are going to get much more faster than that as the time ticks through. And there are simple banker laps from CRG. Paolo Ippolito and Brandon Nielsen are still completing their laps. Ippolito goes 4th, Nielsen goes 5th, but they're not really maximising the full potential of these karts yet. They're going to wait until the last lap, really, to dial in that fastest qualifying lap. So the times that you see on the left of your screen at the moment, they are the sort of early banker lap for each of the drivers. They're not really going to be totally indicative of what we're going to see from each of the competitors. When we've got 2 minutes to go in the session, that's when we should really head down to the circuit and have a look at what the KZ2 drivers are going to do for those final 2 minutes, because that's when you'll really get to see the drivers at full tempo. At this point in the qualifying session, they just dial in the karts, they get the settings how they want them, and they're just bleeding their way into it. You don't want to go too early in a KZ2. You kind of have to warm the kart up a little bit, and that is proved by the fact that Daniel Vazil has just set a 1 minute .086. So I have a feeling that they are going to get just underneath the 60-second mark. I have a feeling we're going to get sub 60 very shortly into this qualifying session. So let's see how the lap times come through. Ippolito's gone second on a 1 minute dead .223, 1 minute flat .227 for Brad Benavides, so he's going very well in third position. We've also got Brandon Nielsen in fourth from Alvaro Garcia and Antonio Garay, then Brice de Guy, Ricardo Avila and Rodrigo Almeida. So the gap between them all 1.2 seconds. It won't stay that way. With 2 minutes to go in the session, things are going to get very tight up at the front of KZ2. And these competitors are going to want to be very, very fluid in their lap times. This is when they can maximize the tire temperatures, they can really push the engines, they'll have got the kart up to speed, and that's when the sticky track surface is going to give them the best possible grip they can get out of this weekend. So let's see how the drivers are going to get on for these final 2 minutes of qualifying. And as I say that, Brad Benavides does indeed go sub 60, so it's going to be less than a minute for a lap around the circuit in KZ2. Let's head down there and watch the final minute and a half or so of qualifying to see how these guys are getting on. So there is the man in fastest time, or at least was, because now Paolo Ippolito in the CRG has gone faster still, a 59.875 for Ippolito. I did say the CRGs were going to be the ones to watch. Daniel Vazil has gone third fastest for DR, and then Brandon Nielsen is fourth place. Antonio Garay currently in P5 from Alvaro Garcia, and then Rodrigo Almeida and Ricardo Avila. Brice de Guy in ninth position at this moment in time. But there are still some fast times to come. Brad Benavides faster than he has gone in the first sector. So let's see if he can match Paolo Ippolito in the second and third splits. He's not quite as fast in the second sector, so he doesn't quite improve on that particular lap. He needs to go a bit faster on this final lap if he's going to make a move up. That is Rodrigo Almeida, the young man from Mozambique, and one of the fastest Africans in the world. He's done an absolutely fantastic job in 7th position so far. He's still learning the world of gearbox karting, having come straight out of direct drive. 2 years ago, he was representing his country in the FIA Karting Academy Trophy, so essentially on a junior kart. So the fact he stepped up to KZ2 for this year, it's a big mountain to climb for any driver. There is his teammate, Daniel Vazil, the Romanian, who runs in third at the moment. And Brad Benavides goes fastest of all in the first sector. He was building up to a fast lap. He goes reasonably quick in the second. It's not his fastest, but it's still competitive enough. He might be able to get back into pole position as the time ticks down to 0. Can Brad Benavides get the fastest time from qualifying? He comes down across the line now. Let's see if Benavides can get pole position. Not quite. So close to it, but it isn't quite going to happen on this occasion for Benavides. He'll still hold the front row of the grid if he keeps it together. Looks like Ippolito has bowed out of the lap. And is that Brandon Nielsen deciding he's had enough as well? So it looks to me as though that final push for pole position has been clinched by Paolo Ippolito. In fact, he crosses the line. It's not his fastest lap by any means at all, but he's done enough. Paolo Ippolito for CRG is the first pole position sitter in KZ2 for Champions of the Future. It's been an absolutely fantastic run for him, and he really has put on a terrific show. Benavides in second place, Daniel Vasil is third, Brandon Nielsen in fourth position from Garay, Garcia, Almeida, Avila, and Brice Degay. So we'll bring those results up on your screen very shortly indeed, and then we'll close out. Don't forget, of course, that we are still going to be doing 2 days of live streaming tomorrow and Sunday. Our qualifying heats this afternoon, sadly, we're not able to bring you because we need to put a few more cameras in position, obviously, to give you the best of the show. For technical reasons, that's not been achievable while also putting the qualifying show together. So we'll make sure that's all ready and prepared for you for a 10:15 in the morning start, local time here, after the warm-up sessions have obviously been completed. And we'll go racing for the first time in 2020 in the Champions of the Future paddock. It's going to be fantastic to see all of the karts out there across the 4 classes in Mini 60, OK Junior, OK Senior, and of course KZ2. So we'll bring the final results of KZ2 in just a moment, but don't forget you need to like and subscribe to the channel here at Telemundi Media and hit the notification bell as well, and that way you'll never miss a moment of all of the great racing action. And of course you can delve through our archives as well. There's plenty of great racing for you to keep an eye on. So let's talk you through the final positions in the KZ2 qualifying session, and that is a pole position for Paolo Ippolito from Brad Benavides, Daniel Vasil in third position from Brandon Nielsen in fourth, Antonio Garay and Alvaro Garcia in the top 6 from Rodrigo Almeida, Ricardo Avila is 8th, and in 9th place it is Brice Degay, the experienced Frenchman. So we're going to wrap up proceedings in our qualifying show. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope you've had plenty of entertainment watching the karts out on circuit as much as we all have. We're going to be back again tomorrow at 10:15 in the morning. And that is local time, of course, so you'll need to add and subtract the hours for where you are watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and you'll never miss a lap of the action tomorrow. If you want to still follow the races this afternoon, you can do via our live timing application, which is on our website, championskarting.com. And you can follow all the action as it happens. We'll be back in action for the race day itself. For the heats, all of the 4 classes will be covered tomorrow here at Zuera. We hope you've enjoyed it. It's going to be fantastic race action tomorrow, and we can't wait for it to get started. I'm Jake Sanson. See you for race action tomorrow at 10:15 local time here in Zuera.